Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales. Chapter 28. Skyrocketing levels in a towering temple built within a gloomy and silent mountain. A black flash suddenly appeared on the altar in the center of the temple. When this black flash disappeared, Beast Emperor's bandaged figure stood in its place. Apart from Beast Emperor's aura being slightly weaker, his level actually remained the same. He was still at level 132, Tier 4, despite Xiaofan having killed him just a moment ago. Black Flame. You thought you could land a blow on me using the Abyssal Curse? Dream on. I received the Immortal Body Curse from the evil god. Don't even think you can harm me so easily. When Beast Emperor recalled the moment Xiaofan killed him, he sneered. Just you wait. I already have the foundation to evolve a Tier 5 Faux Saint monster. Once I gather enough materials, I'll let your Zero Wing feel the fear of death. The Tier 4 Curse Immortal Body allowed him to get resurrected instantly at his designated evil god's temple without penalty once a day. He could also use the curse to kill himself, and even being under restraints wouldn't stop this curse from activating. This move was the trump card he prepared in case of capture by NPCs. After all, if he got caught by NPCs, particularly the War God's Temple's NPCs, he would be doomed eternally. It was also because of this curse that he no longer had to live in hiding and didn't have to fear capture. It's a pity I didn't manage to rescue Lu Xinglua. With his help, I could produce the Tier 5 Faux Saint monster much sooner. Once again, it seems I have nobody but myself to rely on, Beast Emperor thought to himself. Unlike himself, Lu Xinglua was only at Tier 3. Xiaofan could easily capture Lu Xinglua. Moreover, Lu Xinglua's previous escape from Sky Spring City had tainted his body with evil energy. If Xiaofan handed Lu Xinglua over to the War God's Temple, then it would be game over for the latter. Not only would Lu Xinglua have to create a new account, but he would also have to wait over a dozen days before he could do so. But so what if I have to rely on myself? Now that I have that great treasure, let alone 1,000 mythic faux saints, I can create even 5,000 mythic faux saints in a short time. After thinking up to this point, Beast Emperor opened his spatial bag to take out the great treasure he obtained recently. Panic surfaced on Beast Emperor's face a moment later. It's gone. After looking through his spatial bag 3 times, Beast Emperor's mind went blank. It couldn't have. At this thought, Beast Emperor's face turned ashen. Black Flame. I won't rest until you're dead. Beast Emperor bellowed. The deafening roar echoed throughout the silent cavern. At the same time as Beast Emperor got resurrected, near the distant Secret Covenant Tower, Xiaofan restrained Lu Xinglua with a darkness bind and captured him with a mobile prison. He gave Lu Xinglua no opportunity to escape or commit suicide. The entire process of Xiaofan killing Beast Emperor and imprisoning Lu Xinglua took only 5 seconds, and watching this scene play out made 100 Ghosts' members break out in a cold sweat. This was because Xiaofang's attack was astonishingly fast. Even Windshadow, a Tier 4 Shadow Dancer, had reacted to the attack only when Xiaofan was already standing in front of Beast Emperor. Moreover, the power of Xiaofang's attack was equally incredible. Apart from Tier 4 defensive classes, any other Tier 4 player would most likely die instantly if struck. Meanwhile, after Beast Emperor's death, the Faux Saint army fell into chaos, and the remaining hundreds of thousands of Faux Saint monsters began fleeing in all directions. Only the mythic-ranked Faux Saint saboteurs remained relatively calm. Knowing that they couldn't break the barrier sealing the map, the 300-plus saboteurs promptly swarmed toward Xiaofang's group in a last-ditch effort. Foolish resistance. Seeing the saboteurs' reaction, Xiaofan took out the Ring of Gospel, injected 5,000 magic crystals into the ring, and activated Miniature World. Immediately, the space within a 5,000-yard radius of Xiaofan froze. Simultaneously, a powerful pressure descended from the sky, increasing the weight of all Faux Saint monsters present and reducing their basic attributes and physique drastically. In the blink of an eye, the faux saint monsters had their combat power halved. World suppression? Long Day exclaimed in astonishment when he noticed the faux saint saboteur's physique and speed plummeting. How many trump cards does this black flame have? Previously, he thought that the remaining 300+ faux saint saboteurs would still bring Zero Wing a lot of trouble. However, seeing the present situation, he found his earlier thoughts laughable. World suppression was different from the suppression effect of ordinary magic barriers. It suppressed a person from all aspects, and even Tier 4 existences with a mana domain couldn't resist it. And if a Tier 4 existence did not possess a mana domain, they couldn't fly within the frozen space. As a result of Xiaofan's miniature world, the faux saint saboteurs now possessed combat power at only the entry level of Tier 4. Every one of them had also fallen to the ground after losing their ability to fly. At this time, let alone Tier 4 players, even Tier 3 peak experts could put up a fight against these mythic monsters. Ladies and gentlemen from 100 Ghosts, can you take action now, as per our agreement? Xiaofan asked, smiling as he turned to look at 100 Ghosts' members. Or were your words from before merely a joke? You jest, Guild Leader Black Flame. We will certainly adhere to our agreement, Wind Shadow replied, chuckling. With a wave of his hand, he commanded, you bunch, get moving. Obeying Wind Shadow's command, the Black Knight Legion's members promptly intercepted the faux saint saboteurs. Although these Black Knights were only at Tier 3, they sported Tier 3 mana set equipment. In terms of raw power, they surpassed even the faux saint saboteurs when these monsters were at their peak, let alone now. The next moment, the saboteurs could be seen getting repulsed after just one exchange. They were no match for the Black Knight Legion at all. After glancing at the Black Knights, Xiaofan turned to Fire Dance and said, Fire, have Summer and the others join the fight as well. Everyone should get at least 3 saboteur kills. These faux saint saboteurs were absolute treasures. Although they did not drop any loot, the dark grey mist that they released was of incredible value not only to Tier 4 players but also Tier 3 players. Now that the era of Tier 4 had come, it would be best if he helped alluring Summer and the others reach Tier 4 as well. Okay, I'll have them come right away. Fire Dance nodded and promptly contacted the mobile fortress. As Fire Dance was summoning alluring Summer and the others, Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words suddenly approached Xiaofan. Guild Leader Black Flame, is it possible for you to sell us a dozen or so of these saboteurs? Unyielding Heart asked in embarrassment. We are willing to pay 1 complete Tier 3 legacy for each of saboteur. There was no way the 2 of them wouldn't covet these faux saint saboteurs. With the help of that grey mist, they could increase their guild's peak experts' chances of reaching Tier 4 by a significant margin. At this stage of the game, the various superpowers were all in urgent need of Tier 4 combatants to defend their territories. If their 2 guilds could gain a few more Tier 4 players within a short period, they would survive these difficult times much more easily. Looking at the embarrassed expressions of the 2 people before him, Xiaofan chuckled and said, Say no more. Your guilds have sacrificed a lot in helping Zero Wing resist the superpowers. You can each take 30 saboteurs as compensation. I don't need you to pay anything for them. Truthfully, he felt very grateful to Unyielding Soul and Crimson Emperor. If not for the help of these 2 guilds, Zero Wing couldn't have held the Secret Covenant Tower until he returned. Thus, he didn't mind giving away a few faux saint saboteurs. Not to mention, if the 2 super first-rate guilds grew stronger, they would be of much greater help to Zero Wing as well. Most importantly, Zero Wing didn't have that many Tier 3 players who could make use of the saboteur's grey mist. The grey mist could be described as icing on the cake. Like the Crystal of Souls and Soul Water, the grey mist was useful only to players with the potential to reach Tier 4. Meanwhile, there were fewer than 20 such players in the present Zero Wing. It also wouldn't serve any purpose to let these players gain more than 1 stack of the grey mist. The help they could gain for their promotion from one stack would be the same as what they could gain from multiple stacks. Hence, it would be much better to use the additional saboteurs to raise the levels of Fire Dance and the others instead. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, thank you, Guild Leader Black Flame. Unyielding Heart and Illusory Words were jubilant upon hearing Xiaofan's words. 60 saboteurs would be more than enough for their 2 guilds' peak experts. Subsequently, after around an hour of battle, Xiaofan and the others annihilated the foe Saint army. By then, Xiaofang's level had risen from 146 to 148, while Fire Dance and the other Tier 4 members of Zero Wing had risen to level 145. As for Alluring Summer and the other Zero Wing executives who were still stuck at Tier 3, they had risen to level 130 and above. Everyone had leveled up remarkably from this battle. After killing the foe Saint army, Wind Shadow handed a Tier 3 mana set equipment forging design to Xiaofan as agreed. And after receiving the forging design, Xiaofan released Awakened Abyss from Sky Spring City's prison and let 100 Ghosts' members leave intact once the World Mirror deactivated. With the end of the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower and the disappearance of the World Mirror, news of this battle spread like wildfire. Chapter 28-29, Beast Emperors loot Fire Dragon Empire, Flame Dragon City, the foe Saint army got annihilated, and 100 Ghosts surrendered? How is that possible? When the various superpowers learned about the outcome of the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower, they were dumbstruck. After all, the forces attacking Zero Wing had included 1,000 mythic-ranked foe Saint monsters and the top combatants of 100 Ghosts, a mysterious guild that even the 5 great super guilds feared. Nevertheless, such a force had actually lost. Moreover, the loss had been an utter rout, a one-sided massacre. The various superpowers were especially shocked and they saw the video of the purifying light vaporizing a large chunk of the foe Saint army and heavily injuring every one of the foe Saint saboteurs. They felt as if the system was playing a cruel joke on them when they watched this attack. Meanwhile, inside Frost Heaven's residence. When Mushin read the report her subordinate sent her, she exclaimed in shock, "Amazing!" As expected of Zero Wing. Frost Heaven had considered helping Zero Wing out of its predicament. However, after gaining a reserve spot for the 12 great guilds, Frost Heaven had faced many problems. Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire were especially troublesome. The 2 super guilds had clashed with Frost Heaven on numerous occasions in the Fire Dragon Empire after the competition. In addition, superpowers like Mythology and Miracle secretly interfered with Frost Heaven's operations. This made it incredibly difficult for Frost Heaven to spread its influence across the Fire Dragon Empire. If not for Frost Heaven garrisoning various major NPC cities in the Fire Dragon Empire and gaining a home ground advantage, the guild would have long since gotten torn to shreds. After all, Sky Dragon House and Pride Empire had incredibly deep roots in the Fire Dragon Empire. In fact, some of the Fire Dragon Empire's NPC forces had even allied with the 2 super guilds. Fortunately, Frost Heaven had also occupied the Snow Lion Kingdom, a coastal country. The kingdom provided Frost Heaven with a continuous supply of resources and funds, allowing the guild to keep fighting in the Fire Dragon Empire. A mobile fortress, is it? Hong Xinyuan also couldn't help feeling a little envious when he read the information regarding the small mobile fortress. I wonder when we will be able to obtain one of our own? According to the reports, with the offensive and defensive capabilities of the mobile fortress, it could survive in a level 140+ neutral map. This made it a dream facility of all superpowers at this stage of the game. Not only did level 140+ neutral maps allow players to level up much more quickly, but they also held various rare resources, legacies, ancient ruins, and even 7 luminaries crystals. Originally, players could acquire 7 luminaries crystals from only a few specific maps. However, all maps above level 140 had a considerable chance of spawning 7 luminaries crystals. This was because the random team dungeons and time-limited regional dungeons that appeared in these maps all had a small chance of dropping 7 Luminaries crystals. However, level 140+ maps were incredibly dangerous. Not only did foreign energies that would rapidly corrode a player's body permeate these maps, but powerful monsters were also rife in them. Although level 140+ maps were not as dangerous as Forbidden Lands, beast tides frequently occurred there, regardless of night and day. Even Tier 4 experts would perish if they accidentally came across one of these beast tides and got surrounded. Most importantly, level 140+ maps were the main hunting ground of NPCs. Now that Zero Wing had the mobile fortress, Hong Xinyuan could already imagine just how much of an advantage the guild would have in the future. In fact, its complete control over the Secret Covenant Tower already provided it an advantage not even super guilds possessed. At this point, all Zero Wing needed to do was wait until it had a sufficiently large number of Tier 3 players. With ample strength, the guild could begin occupying various resource spots and NPC cities in God's domain. Eventually, Zero Wing might even become an existence rivaling the 5 great super guilds. At the same time, Cold Shadow, in the distant Apocalypse Empire, also received this shocking piece of news. Interesting. Even the foe Saint Army and 100 Ghosts are helpless against them. Cold Shadow revealed a rare smile on her face when she read the report her subordinate sent her. After suffering such a miserable loss, Lu Xinglua will most likely lose his position as heir. What should we do now, Vice Guild Leader? White Feather asked worriedly. The guild leader sent us here to lay a solid foundation on the eastern continent so that we can dominate both continents in the future. Yet, Zero Wing is growing stronger while Miracle has half a foot in the grave. Don't worry. So long as we complete the task Lord Odin gave us, mythology will no longer face any hindrances on the eastern continent, Cold Shadow said with a faint smile. If we're lucky, we might even get to take over Zero Wing cities. After all, the eastern continent's various powers don't have much time left. Not much time left? White Feather was slightly surprised to hear Cold Shadow's words. However, she quickly recalled something and asked, has Lord Odin succeeded on his side already? Emicham. The eastern continent will become the first battlefield. Cold Shadow nodded. When that time comes, the eastern continent's various powers can only watch as they gradually perish. Even Zero Wing with its mobile fortress won't be spared. Twin Towers Kingdom, Sky Spring City, because of Zero Wing's landslide victory, the various superpowers that had forcibly occupied Sky Spring City fell into dismay. They never thought that all their efforts would end up being for naught. Unlike the superpowers members, though, the members of Zero Wing, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor cheered and celebrated like maniacs. After all, the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower had left their 3 guilds with complete ownership of the tower. Meanwhile, with the Tier 3 legacies the tower produced, the number of Tier 3 experts in their 3 guilds would skyrocket. Eventually, even super guilds would be no match for them. In fact, given enough time, their 3 guilds wouldn't even have to worry about NPC forces anymore. Elder Windshadow, why did you give the Tier 3 mana set equipment forging design to Zero Wing? That will just make Zero Wing even stronger and drastically affect our plans. The guild leader will definitely reprimand us once we return, asked Awakened Abyss, who had just been released from Sky Spring City's prison. He had been rendered speechless when he heard of Windshadow's actions. The Tier 3 mana set equipment could allow Tier 3 players to combat Tier 4 players. Any guild that could mass-produce this set would become a huge threat in the game. In fact, the set's forging design could even be considered more valuable than the mobile fortress. After all, the mobile fortress could secure only one location at a time. In comparison, having multiple Tier 4 combatants allowed a guild to secure multiple positions simultaneously. Abyss, do you still not understand Elder Windshadow's personality? Long Day suddenly asked, smiling. Do you really think he would let Zero Wing take advantage of him? What do you mean? Awakened Abyss asked in wonder. With how powerful the Tier 3 mana set equipment is, do you think Zero Wing can mass-produce it just by having its forging design? Chuckling, Long Day explained, the minimum requirement to forge the set is an advanced master forger. In addition, the forger in question has to be at the advanced magician standard. Most importantly, the set needs incredibly rare materials to produce. Mana adamantite is hardly available even on our side, let alone here. And even if we assume Zero Wing can actually manufacture the set, there is still the Tier 4 strength requirement for equipping it. If Zero Wing can't fulfill even one of these points, that forging design will be no better than a piece of scrap paper. Upon listening to Long Day's explanation, Awakened Abyss immediately came to a realization. Smiling, he said, in other words, what Zero Wing got is merely a piece of scrap paper. That's right. That Black Flame thinks that he made a huge profit, but that's far from being the case in reality, Long Day said, nodding. However, we should leave this place quickly. The guild leader notified us that this continent is soon to be doomed. Once we finish our tasks here, we need to return as soon as possible. It would be bad if we got dragged into the mess. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, I understand. I'll go complete the tasks the guild leader gave me together with Jade Leaf, Awakened Abyss said, growing even more excited after hearing Long Day's subsequent words. Previously, he had still been entertaining thoughts of revenge on Zero Wing. However, they now seemed superfluous. While 100 Ghosts' members were preparing to leave Sky Spring City, inside the distant mobile fortress, Xiaofan was shocked when he inspected the items Beast Emperor dropped. How did this thing end up in his hands? For a time, Xiaofan couldn't help doubting his eyes. This was because both items Beast Emperor dropped were extraordinary. One of them was even something Xiaofan had been searching for all this time. The Treasure of Fire, Purification Crown. Chapter 28:30, Treasure of Fire. Xiaofan couldn't help growing ecstatic as he looked at the Purification Crown. Finding the 7 treasures wasn't easy. Even though he could use the golden stigmata's detect skill to locate the 7 treasures, the skill had a limited range. Moreover, there were many ways one could block the effects of the skill. Take the Purification Crown in his hands, for example. Neither detect's active or passive detection effects were reacting to it at all. Hence, obtaining the Treasure of Fire from killing Beast Emperor came as an absolute surprise to Xiaofan. He tapped his finger on the Purification Crown and called up its attribute panel, curious about the functions of this legendary Treasure of Fire. Purification Crown, fragmented legendary rank item, a fragment of the Treasure of Fire. However, due to being sealed by the evil god, the fragment is incapable of exhibiting its true power. Skill 1 Seed of Flame, can control and transform all flames into seeds of flame. Upon absorbing the seed of flame, the user will be able to manipulate the flame used to create the seed of flame. Can transform up to Tier 4 flames, cooldown, 3 days. Skill 2 Purification Fire, expend 300 fire-attributed magic crystals to produce a Purification Fire. The Purification Fire has a 20% chance of elevating a creature's life rating and an 80% chance of thoroughly extinguishing a creature. Skill 3 Divine Purification, expend God Crystals to purify the Purification Crown. A total of 20 God Crystals are required to purify the Purification Crown. Current number of absorbed God Crystals, 0, this item is corroded by the evil god's power. The golden stigmata can purify the evil energy corroding this item with the help of God Crystals. Cannot be destroyed. Has a chance of dropping on death. No wonder Beast Emperor was able to create so many mythic foe saints. He's been relying on this crown's ability. Realization dawned upon Xiaofan when he finished reading the Purification Crown's attributes. He had to admit that every one of the 7 treasures was heaven-defying. The Purification Crown's Purification Fire skill was an absolute treasure when it came to elevating a creature's potential. Its only flaw was the 80% chance of causing the death of the target creature. Unless one had already exhausted their latent potential and were still seeking further improvement, making use of the Purification Fire should be their last resort. Only someone like Beast Emperor, who could mass-produce faux saint monsters easily, could use the Purification Crown without worries. So long as he managed to produce even one mythic-ranked faux saint monster, it wouldn't matter even if he expended hundreds of Grand Lord-ranked faux saint monsters in the process. After all, producing Grand Lord-ranked faux saint monsters was an incredibly simple process. The only real problem Beast Emperor had was finding the necessary fire-attributed magic crystals. If the Purification Fire skill required ordinary magic crystals instead, Beast Emperor would have most likely had tens or even hundreds of thousands of mythic-ranked faux saint monsters. This also explained why Beast Emperor had created an organization like Saint's Hand to support him. This Purification Fire really is a gem. Even though its success rate is only 20%, the possibility of elevating a creature's life rating makes the risk completely worthwhile. Xiaofan sighed ruefully as he looked at the effects of the Purification Fire. The term creature did not refer to just faux saint monsters. It encompassed mounts and NPCs. In fact, the Purification Fire worked on players as well, only with significantly diminished effects. At most, it could raise a player's basic attributes and physique. It couldn't help players in getting promoted to Tier 4 or above. However, it was a different story for mounts and NPCs. For mounts and NPCs, improving their life ratings would significantly increase their chances of completing their promotions. At this time, though, Xiaofan dared not experiment with the Purification Fire. At the very least, he wouldn't do so while the skill's success rate was only at 20%. After all, flying mounts and personal guards with high growth potential were not easy to find. If he got unlucky and ended up burning one out of existence, he would definitely die of regret. Subsequently, Xiaofan set his sights on the Purification Crown's first skill. This Seed of Flame is good stuff. A powerful flame might be meaningless for ordinary players, but it was a divine tool for lifestyle players, particularly forgers and alchemists. Having a powerful flame would increase their production success rate considerably. This was especially true for mysterious flames. Even a Tier 1 mysterious flame would be of significant help to players. The only problem was that absorbing a mysterious flame was an excruciatingly painful process, something not just anyone could endure. Moreover, the stronger the mysterious flame, the more painful the absorption process would be. Previously, when Xiaofan had bound the Tier 3 Purple Thunder Flame, he had suffered immensely. Given the level of pain he experienced, he doubted that specialized lifestyle players could absorb a Tier 3 mysterious flame. After all, unlike himself, specialized lifestyle players tended to have less tolerance for pain. However, the Seed of Flame skill could dampen this excruciating absorption process by transforming flames into seeds of flame. Absorbing a seed of flame was significantly less painful than absorbing a flame directly. Players would have an easier time taking control over a flame. Of course, the best part about the Seed of Flame skill wasn't the fact that it could turn mysterious flames into seeds of flame. The skill's description clearly stated that it could transform all flames into seeds of flame. Flames didn't refer to just mysterious flames, there were other types of flames, such as the flame spat out by monsters and naturally occurring flames. In other words, the Seed of Flame skill was a heaven-defying skill capable of creating mysterious flames. All Xiaofan needed to do was search for powerful flames and convert them into mysterious flames. However, as the Purification Crown was sealed, the most it could create were Tier 4 mysterious flames. Even so, this was already an incomparably precious ability. In God's domain, the rarity of Tier 3 mysterious flames was on par with that of fragmented legendary items. As for Tier 4 mysterious flames, they were basically the stuff of legends. Nevertheless, the purification crown was actually capable of creating Tier 4 mysterious flames. One could see just how heaven-defying this ability was. Of course, finding a flame that could be converted into a Tier 4 mysterious flame wouldn't be an easy task. After all, existences capable of producing such powerful flames weren't a dime a dozen. However, Xiaofan would be satisfied so long as he could produce a couple of Tier 3 mysterious flames. For the candlelight trading firm's lifestyle players, being able to own a Tier 3 mysterious flame was something that only happened in their dreams. Xiaofan took out the Tier 4 Hellfire, an excited expression appearing on his face. I initially planned to wait a little while longer before absorbing this, but I think I can give it a try now. He had been looking forward to absorbing the Hellfire for a long time now. However, he also understood that taking control of a Tier 4 mysterious flame would be unimaginably difficult. The process would have an extremely high demand on his concentration and pain tolerance. If he failed to absorb the Hellfire, he might even suffer a backlash. Hence, after obtaining the Hellfire, he did not dare casually absorb it. Moreover, after he had reached Tier 4, his soul had been strengthened significantly, which allowed him to resist the soul chain's threat for a much longer period. There had been no need for him to take such a risk. However, now that he had the purification crown, he wouldn't have to worry about the risks of absorbing the Hellfire. Subsequently, Xiaofan used the purification crown on the Hellfire. The crown immediately released a dazzling radiance, and a golden mist enveloped the Hellfire. Upon sensing the threat from the purification crown, the Hellfire began resisting violently, its aura flaring until it rivaled that of superior mythic monsters. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. However, the purification crown was one of the 7 treasures, an item carefully crafted by the goddess of space, an ancient god. Even if it was only a fragment of the original treasure of fire, its power wasn't something a Tier 4 mysterious flame could resist. 20 seconds later, the purification crown devoured the Hellfire completely and transformed it into a dark gray seed of flame. In its current form, the Hellfire's power was drastically suppressed. System, do you wish to absorb the seed of Hellfire? Absorb. Upon seeing the system prompt, Xiaofan chose to absorb the Tier 4 seed of flame without hesitation. Chapter 28-31, Tier 4 Mysterious Flames Effects. As soon as Xiaofan chose to absorb the seed of flame, the dark gray seed in his palm turned into streaks of light that merged with his body. Immediately afterward, Xiaofan couldn't help gritting his teeth. It hurt so much. The pain he currently felt was far beyond what he had felt when he absorbed the Tier 3 Purple Thunder Flame. It was like his blood was boiling and millions of ants were nibbling at his bones. If not for the recent breakthrough in his concentration, he would have most likely failed to endure this pain. The next moment, a loading bar showing his fusion progress with the seed of Hellfire appeared before him. The loading bar filled up at a snail's pace, increasing by only 1% every dozen seconds or so. The pain is already so unbearable even with the help of a seed of flame. It's no wonder so few players managed to control a Tier 4 mysterious flame in the past. Realization dawned upon Xiaofan as he looked at the slowly rising fusion bar. Any normal person would lose their mind if they had to endure this pain for even a second, yet this pain was only the result of absorbing a Tier 4 seed of flame. He couldn't even begin to imagine how much pain directly absorbing a Tier 4 mysterious flame would involve. At this point, Xiaofan suspected that the people who had successfully absorbed Tier 4 mysterious flames in his previous life had done so using special means like he did. After all, he had honed his pain tolerance for 10 years in the game. In this life, he had even developed his concentration beyond what he had in his previous life. Despite that, he still found absorbing even a weakened Tier 4 mysterious flame unbearable. What would it take to absorb an unaltered Tier 4 mysterious flame? 3%. 10%. 30%. Hold on. I must hold on. At this point, Xiaofan was gritting his teeth, and his eyes were bloodshot. His complexion was also unprecedentedly pale. And worse, as the fusion progressed, its rate of increment gradually slowed down. Even after 2 whole hours had gone by, the fusion bar had reached only 73%. In addition, when the fusion crossed 60%, the seed of flame within him began radiating powerful mental assaults every second, battering his sea of consciousness. The subsequent mental assault that hit him at 74% nearly made him collapse. His consciousness began blurring, and he felt as if he was about to lose control of his body. This won't do. I need to think of a way to resist these mental assaults. Otherwise, I won't last until the end. While fusing with a mysterious flame, players had to remain conscious throughout the process. Otherwise, the fusion would be deemed a failure. Upon thinking up to this point, Xiaofan began applying his mental defense technique against the seed of flame's mental assaults, gathering his focus into a single point and stealing his mind. While this technique worked wonders initially, after the fusion progress reached 80%, the seed of flame seemingly noticed his trick. Immediately afterward, the seed began releasing mental assaults at a much higher rate, going from once per second to twice per second, then even increasing to 3, 4, 5 times per second. The frequency of the mental assaults continuously escalated, the seed of flame adamant in breaking Xiaofan's mind. It can even play such a move? Xiaofan was stupefied by this situation. Faced with these high-frequency mental assaults, Xiaofan dared not relax for even a moment. However, maintaining his mental defense technique also made him feel indescribably uncomfortable. This technique was akin to a person flexing their muscles. While one could harden one's muscles by flexing them, it would be exhausting to keep one's muscles flexed for long periods. Likewise, Xiaofan couldn't keep his focus condensed for long periods. Moreover, as his mental defense technique was much more complex than the flexing one's muscles, the time he could maintain it was even shorter. 83%. 87%. 92%. The more frequent the mental assaults were, the less time he had to breathe. At some point, his mind even began feeling suffocated. Is it still not done? Looking at the fusion bar, Xiaofan felt as if he was on the brink of collapse. At this time, his body pains already felt insignificant compared to the mental suffocation. In fact, his body was already ignoring the burning pain the seed of flame inflicted. Now, the only thing his mind could think of was finding an opportunity to catch a breath. Just when Xiaofan felt as if he would die from suffocation, the system's indifferent voice entered his ears. System, the Hellfire's fusion is complete. The Hellfire is now bound as player Yi Feng's personal property. System, congratulations. You have been tempered by the Hellfire. All basic attributes increased by 300 points, all basic attributes increased by 10%, physique improved by 20%, reaction speed improved by 20%, mental control improved by 40%, fire and ice resistances plus 150, and control over fire-type mana improved by 20%. Xiaofan inhaled deeply upon hearing the system notification. When air filled his lungs again, he felt revived. After relaxing his mind, he could feel the Hellfire's energy spreading throughout his body. His originally depleted concentration also began recovering crazily. So, this is the power of a Tier 4 mysterious flame? At this moment, Xiaofan felt reborn. His basic attributes might not have increased by much after absorbing the Hellfire, but his acuity of the world of God's domain had undergone a drastic change. He felt as if he had stepped into a whole new world. His concentration standard, in particular, had gone from the Tier 4 intermediate standard to the Tier 4 peak standard. Aside from the improvements to his mind and body, the Hellfire's active power was similarly astonishing. Hellfire, Tier 4 mysterious flame, when activated, improves destructive power by 100% and effects of fire-type skills and spells by 100%, grants attacks a 150% mental assault modifier, and increases the success rate of forging, alchemy, and cooking by 25%. Upon reading the Tier 4 Hellfire's active effects, Xiaofan finally understood why Tier 4 mysterious flames were regarded as legends in God's domain. The Tier 4 Hellfire was a heaven-defying tool for both combat and lifestyle players. The Hellfire's ability to add mental assaults to attacks was especially amazing, far more amazing than purely physical or magical attacks. After all, there was no clear attribute for mental assaults in God's domain. Likewise, there were no in-game methods for resisting mental assaults. Players could only rely on their own minds to withstand such assaults. Players lacking in mental fortitude could lose control over their bodies after suffering just one strike. And even if they didn't, they would still feel disoriented and their bodies uncomfortable. Now that Xiaofan had the Hellfire in his possession, he dared to confront even superior mythic monsters of the same level directly. However, rather than the combat bonuses the Hellfire provided, what Xiaofan paid more attention to were its supportive effects. The Hellfire's 25% increase to production success rate was something even Grandmaster Forgers would desire greatly. The higher the quality of an item, the lower its production success rate. Normally, the theoretical production success rate provided by the system was the highest success rate achievable. However, even after reaching the Grandmaster standard, players still wouldn't be capable of reaching this upper limit, and this was after high-quality tools were included in the equation. Not to mention, tools that increased production success rates were less effective the higher the quality of the item being produced was. However, mysterious flames were an exception. Their effects remained the same regardless of the quality of the item being produced. With the Tier 4 Hellfire, I can probably produce epic weapons at a 30% success rate now. Xiaofan felt indescribably excited. When he obtained the Tier 3 mana set equipment forging design, he had decided to set it aside temporarily. One of the reasons for doing so was his disinclination to waste precious materials. After all, mana adamantite was incredibly precious. In the modern God's domain, its rarity almost rivaled that of 7 luminaries crystals. Secondly, he wished to use mana iron ore as a replacement. However, he needed mana iron ingots of considerably high purity to accomplish this. Although the Tier 3 Purple Thunder Flame possessed excellent smelting capabilities, it still couldn't smelt mana iron ore into special ranked mana iron ingots, producing only advanced mana iron ingots at best. Only a Tier 4 Mysterious Flame could accomplish such a feat. Of course, using special mana iron ingots to produce the Tier 3 mana set equipment would degrade the set slightly. However, the end result would still let Tier 3 players hold their ground against mythic monsters. As Xiaofan was contemplating how to mass-produce the Tier 3 mana set equipment, he suddenly received a call from Fire Dance. After accepting the call request, Xiaofan asked, "Did something happen over at Skyspring City?" News of the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower had shaken the entire God's domain. At this point, it was no exaggeration to say that no player forces in the Twin Towers Kingdom would dare go against Zero Wing. Logically, there shouldn't be any problems there. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. No. It's just that there are too many people applying to join Zero Wing right now, Fire Dance replied with a bitter smile. We gained over 500,000 new members after just half a day, including over 10,000 Tier 3 players. All of the top-tier weapons and equipment we got from the battle in Skyspring City before have already been exchanged. If we don't replenish the warehouse, we won't be able to expand our forces further even if we want to. I understand. Xiaofan smiled at Fire Dance's words and said, I still have some epic items as well as a bunch of level 130 plus weapons and equipment. They should be enough to tide us over for now. I'll figure out a follow-up solution later. Fire Dance simply responded with a helpless nod. With the number of guild members waiting to exchange for weapons and equipment, a few hundred pieces of level 130 plus weapons and equipment wouldn't make much of a difference. They would most likely be gone in half an hour. However, as she was pondering how the guild could acquire more weapons and equipment, a massive batch of weapons and equipment suddenly appeared in Zero Wing's guild warehouse. These weapons and equipment were none other than the epic weapons and equipment Xiaofan had purchased in the ancient god's domain. There were also the various weapons and equipment he got from grinding at the anti-magic volcano, which numbered over 6,000, with even the most inferior piece being level 130 bronze equipment. Chapter 28-32, Popular Warehouse Sky Spring City, Zero Wing's residence. Boss, now that we've joined Zero Wing, I get the feeling that Zero Wing isn't so amazing after all, a level 121, Tier 3 summoner commented to the red-haired woman standing beside him. Looking at a few Tier 3 players walking some distance away, he continued, these core members of Zero Wing aren't even as well equipped as the members of our Crimson Wolf Adventurer team. Most of the Tier 3 core members in the guild residence were equipped with level 110 secret silver equipment, with only a few with level 120 fine gold equipment. In comparison, of the several hundred Crimson Wolf members who had joined Zero Wing, even the most inferior were geared in a mix of level 120 secret silver and fine gold equipment. Their weapons were also level 120 fine gold weapons or better. Their commander even sported level 120 dark gold equipment, 2 pieces of epic equipment, and 1 epic weapon. Although these 3 epic items had a maximum level of level 120, they were still far stronger than level 120 dark gold items. That's normal. Zero Wing just finished a fight with the various superpowers. From what I heard, every one of Zero Wing's Tier 3 experts died at least 2 or 3 times, with some dying up to 6 times. It's only natural to have subpar equipment standards after suffering so many deaths, the red-haired woman clad in fiery red light armor said. Chuckling, she continued, also, we didn't join Zero Wing because of its weapons and equipment but for the sake of grinding in the Secret Covenant Tower and training in the mobile fortress. At this stage of the game, the various superpowers were mostly equal in their stockpiles of weapons and equipment. Not to mention, how could the importance of weapons and equipment possibly beat the importance of getting promoted to Tier 4? She had been looking forward to getting promoted to Tier 4 for a long time now, all the more after witnessing the battle in Sky Spring City. That battle had driven home how insignificant Tier 3 existences were before Tier 4 existences. Despite being one of the top-ranking peak experts in the Twin Towers Kingdom, she doubted she could last more than one hit from a Tier 4 player. However, getting promoted to Tier 4 was incredibly difficult. Even if she could find a Tier 4 legacy land, completing her promotion quest would still be a struggle with her present technical standards. Meanwhile, the quickest way she could develop her techniques to an adequate standard was by joining Zero Wing. This was also the case for everyone else in the Crimson Wolf Adventurer team. Presently, it was already public knowledge that the mobile fortress boasted incredibly dense mana. Moreover, the environment inside the fortress also enhanced one's sensitivity to mana. This would be of great help not only when practicing their skills and spells but also for understanding the operating principles of mana. Since more and more players were reaching Tier 4 in God's domain, information about the Tier 4 promotion quest had also leaked to the public. According to the leaks, a part of the quest required players to learn a Tier 4 skill or spell within a limited period. Thus, to complete this challenge, players needed to have a considerable understanding of and control over mana. Otherwise, even if one managed to find a Tier 4 legacy land, one still wouldn't reach Tier 4. While Crimson Wolf's members were conversing, a commotion suddenly entered their ears, catching their attention. I remember that's where the guild warehouse is, the summoner youth said as he looked in the direction of the commotion curiously. Did Zero Wing's warehouse go empty? No, those people appear excited, the crimson-haired woman said, shaking her head. However, as soon as Crimson Wolf's commander finished speaking, a few excited voices reached them. Crap! Isn't the guild being too generous? They're actually letting us exchange for level 150 epic weapons and equipment. I heard that the other superpowers have only several dozen level 120 epic weapons and equipment in their guild warehouses, yet there are over 100 level 150 epic weapons and equipment here. Did the guild executives make a mistake? That's very possible. Even so, our guild is simply amazing. Other guilds barely have any level 130 equipment in their warehouses, yet we have over 6,000. I even saw quite a few level 140 secret silver weapons and equipment in the warehouse. With this, we won't have to worry about finding replacement gear after reaching level 130. The veteran members and new members of Zero Wing standing in front of the guild warehouse's exchange counters all had excited looks on their faces. For most players in God's domain, nothing was more important than weapons and equipment, especially top-tier weapons and equipment. Those were items countless players dreamed of obtaining. At this time, Zero Wing had actually put over 100 level 150 epic weapons and equipment up for exchange. No other superpower had ever shown such generosity before. In any other guild, a level 150 epic weapon or equipment would have been immediately monopolized by the guild executives. Normal members of the guild would never have a chance with these items. Of course, exchanging for Zero Wing's level 150 epic weapons and equipment wasn't easy, either. Firstly, one had to be an elite member or above. Secondly, one needed an astronomical number of guild contribution points. This was because even the cheapest piece of level 150 epic equipment cost 3 million GCPs. According to Zero Wing's internal market, 1 GCP was worth 20 copper coins, thus, 3 million GCPs would be worth 6,000 gold coins. Although 6,000 gold was an astronomical price even for level 150 epic equipment, it was nigh impossible to find level 150 epic equipment on the market right now. Guild executives were monopolizing every piece of level 150 epic equipment available. Nevertheless, Zero Wing was allowing even its elite members to exchange for these items. This was undoubtedly a great benefit. Boss, I take back what I just said. Zero Wing's foundation is insane. If we can exchange for a full set of these epic weapons and equipment, we'll be unstoppable. Crimson Wolf's summoner youth said. When he saw the large number of level 150 epic weapons and equipment in the guild warehouse, he was similarly astonished. Even the eyes of Crimson Wolf's red-haired commander blazed with passion as she looked at the exchange list before her. Fire, notify everyone in the team immediately. Have everyone start accumulating as many GCPs as possible. We need to secure a few of these epic items before the other adventurer teams clear them out, the red-haired woman said to the summoner youth. Okay. I'll notify them right away. The urgency of the situation spurred the summoner youth to contact the other Crimson Wolf members who had joined Zero Wing as fast as possible. For a time, many of the new members bustled about, every one of these Tier 3 experts adamant in getting a share of those level 150 epic weapons and equipment. Some of the adventurer teams that joined Zero Wing recently even exchanged their level 110 to level 120 top-tier equipment for GCPs. Since the guild purchased weapons and equipment at 10% to 15% below market value, nobody would normally be willing to trade in their old weapons and equipment for GCPs. They would rather slowly accumulate GCPs through guild quests. However, the current situation was different. There were only so many level 150 epic weapons and equipment available for exchange. If they did not secure these items as soon as possible, other people would do so. Meanwhile, trading in weapons and equipment was undoubtedly the quickest way to accumulate several million GCPs. As a result, in just half an hour after Zero Wing's warehouse was updated, it had gained an additional 2,000 level 120 top-tier equipment and 7,000 level 110 top-tier equipment. The guild's equipment crisis got resolved in the blink of an eye. Guild leader, this move of yours worked wonders. With all these adventurer teams contributing their weapons and equipment to us, we should be able to last for a few more days, Fire Dance said joyfully. It's still too soon to celebrate. Looking at Fire Dance's excited expression, Xiaofan smiled and said, "Notify everyone in the guild that the guild will no longer restrict their activity to just the guild cities and secret covenant towers vicinities. Everyone can move freely now. We're lifting the restriction now." Fire Dance was surprised by Xiaofan's words. Currently, NPC forces were running rampant in the fields, robbing and attacking even the superpowers. Previously, to avoid these predicaments, Zero Wing had chosen to restrict its members' movement to just the guild cities and secret covenant towers vicinities. Removing this restriction now would undoubtedly increase the guild's expenditure. Nodding, Xiaofan said, "We have fallen behind the other superpowers in raiding dungeons and acquiring resources. Letting this situation continue will only be detrimental to the guild. Now that the various superpowers no longer dare have designs on the secret covenant tower, there's naturally no need for us to continue hiding." "I understand. I'll make the necessary preparations right away," Fire Dance said. After giving the matter some thought, she found Xiaofan's words reasonable. Now that Zero Wing's existence was unshakable, they indeed didn't have to lie low anymore. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. Meanwhile, as Fire Dance was drafting this announcement, Xiaofan finished installing the sixth mirror of the World Mirror into the distant Zero Wing City's City Lord's mansion. "System, do you wish to bind the World Mirror with Zero Wing City?" "Bind," Xiaofan answered without hesitation. "System, World Mirror bound successfully." "System, congratulations. Zero Wing City has reached the requirement to become a basic main city. Do you wish to upgrade it?" Chapter 2833 Promotion to Main City. Chapter 2833, Promotion to Main City. Seeing the system prompt, Xiaofan chose to upgrade Zero Wing City without hesitation. "System, Main City upgrade will cost 500,000 gold coins and 200,000 magic crystals. Do you wish to proceed?" "Proceed." Xiaofan was not at all surprised by the upgrade cost. He had long since prepared the necessary funds. The next moment, 500,000 gold coins and 200,000 magic crystals disappeared from his bag. He then received another system notification. "System, payment completed. All players within Zero Wing City will be teleported out of the city in 3 minutes. Upgrade is estimated to take 2 hours. Zero Wing City Region System Announcement: Zero Wing City will commence upgrading into a basic main city. All players within Zero Wing City will be teleported out of the city in 3 minutes. Players within the city are advised to make the necessary preparations." After the regional announcement's appearance, the several 100,000 players that populated Zero Wing City promptly broke out in doubt and exclamations. "What's going on? Zero Wing City's getting upgraded into a main city? Zero Wing City isn't even an advanced city yet. How can it get promoted into a main city? What did Zero Wing do?" The independent players and guild players operating in Zero Wing City were thunderstruck by this unexpected piece of news. This was especially true for the various guild players. They felt as if the system was playing a bad joke on them. Ordinary players might not understand the significance of a main city, but guild players like themselves knew just how difficult it was to raise a guild city status to main city. In fact, even upgrading a guild city into an intermediate city was already incredibly difficult for guilds at this stage of the game. After all, guilds needed to ensure the constant development of their guild city's popularity and security standards, and fulfilling these requirements required a lot of manpower and resources. However, after Zero Wing had prohibited NPCs from entering its guild cities and increased the entrance fees the cities charged, Zero Wing City's prosperity and popularity had plummeted. At this point, let alone getting promoted into a main city, even getting promoted to an intermediate city should be impossible. Yet, the system was now telling them that Zero Wing City was already getting upgraded into a main city. This defied credence. However, no matter how much the players inside Zero Wing City refused to believe the system announcement, the system's timer continued counting down the seconds. Eventually, after 3 whole minutes elapsed, every player in the city was teleported out of the city. Only after finding themselves standing outside the city walls did everyone understand that Zero Wing City's promotion was real. This astonishing piece of news quickly reached the ears of Star Moon Kingdom's various powers, and all of these powers were inevitably shocked. In an era where most superpowers did not even possess a single intermediate guild city, Zero Wing had already secured itself a main guild city. This situation was simply unbelievable. When Liang Jing, who was working in Silverwing City, heard about Zero Wing City's promotion, she hurriedly contacted Xiaofan and asked, "Guild leader, what did you do? How did Zero Wing City get promoted into a main city?" Currently, even the popular Silverwing City was still a long ways from becoming an advanced city. She found it simply incredible that Zero Wing City, which was drastically inferior in terms of popularity, could become a main city ahead of Silverwing City. However, while Liang Jing was confused by this unexpected development, she couldn't help growing excited over it as well. After all, Zero Wing's present situation wasn't as rosy as everyone thought. Although the various superpowers had given up on cornering Zero Wing after the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower, they continued to suppress Zero Wing economically. Although Zero Wing indeed possessed combat power surpassing even that of the 5 great super guilds, it was still limited to passive self-defense. The guild couldn't actively wage war against the various superpowers. Not to mention, due to the war of attrition with the various superpowers, Zero Wing was now severely lacking in weapons and equipment. To make matters worse, the income Zero Wing generated from its guild cities continued to decline. After the major system update, maintenance costs for NPCs had increased. Moreover, guilds were now required to pay upkeep for buildings and magic arrays. And although there was the teleportation hall in Silverwing City, most adventurer teams dared not enter Silverwing City at all, due to the pressure from the various superpowers. At this point, if not for the huge sum of funds from Crimson Emperor and Unyielding Soul, Zero Wing would have long since gone bankrupt and crumbled. Gaining a main city now would undoubtedly solve Zero Wing's financial problems. This was because a main guild city was much more amazing than an ordinary guild city. First and foremost, a main city was much larger than an ordinary guild city. Even a basic main city could easily accommodate more than 10 million inhabitants. Secondly, there were some high-end buildings that could be constructed only in main cities. Thirdly, a main city could recruit up to 30,000 NPC soldiers. With so many NPC soldiers, the main city's security system would be much less vulnerable than ordinary guild cities. Lastly, a main city had the authority to govern a region. With this authority, a city could dispatch up to 20,000 of its soldiers to fight outside the city. In other words, the entire map the city was located in would be under the city's control. If Zero Wing City really did become a main city, the guild could afford to open the city to NPCs, and none of the various NPC forces would dare make trouble in the city. "It's a secret," Xiaofan replied, chuckling. "However, you should get ready on your side. Once Zero Wing City's upgrade is complete, I plan to open the city to the public and construct a teleportation hall in the city that will connect it with Skyspring City. At that time, I'll need you to manage Zero Wing City. As for Silverwing City's management, leave that to Melancholic." "You're having me manage Zero Wing City?" Liang Jing was confused. "But isn't Melancholic working in White River City? Wouldn't it be more convenient to have her manage Zero Wing City?" Shaking his head, Xiaofan said, "No. After Zero Wing City's upgrade, I plan to transfer it to a neutral map far away from Star Moon Kingdom. Melancholic already has her hands full with Candlelight's matters in Star Moon Kingdom. The most she can do is manage Silverwing City. It would be impossible for her to manage Zero Wing City." Not only did Melancholic Smile have to manage the Candlelight trading firm, but as an advanced master forger, she also had to work on getting promoted to Grandmaster Forger. If she had to manage a main city on top of that, she wouldn't even have time to sleep. After all, a main city had many more things that required management than an ordinary guild city. Just the recruitment and management of the main city's 30,000 NPC soldiers would be more than enough to keep a person occupied. Zero Wing City's manager would have to assign daily tasks to these soldiers as well as constantly revise the weapons and equipment configuration of these soldiers, allocating better gear and positions to soldiers who performed well, and so on. From his experience as a guild leader in his previous life, Xiaofan understood just how tedious it was to manage a main guild city. In the past, it was precisely because he had to devote a significant portion of his time to handling guild affairs that he failed to reach Tier 4. Hence, in this life, he had pushed all these tasks to other people while he focused on improving himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have achieved his current combat power. "You're also going to move the city?" Liang Jing's breathing quickened when she heard Xiaofan's words. Just the fact that Zero Wing City was getting promoted into a main city was already plenty shocking. If Xiaofan could also move the city to a neutral map, Zero Wing would be rich. So I need you to begin the necessary preparations now. You'll probably be very busy afterward, Xiaofan said, nodding. Simultaneously, a hint of anticipation appeared in his eyes. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU currently, of Zero Wing's 3 guild cities, Stone Forest City in the Dark Knight Empire and Silverwing City in the Orc Empire held strategic locations. In the case of Stone Forest City, it was necessary to stop the Dark World's invasion. As for Silverwing City, it served as a barrier to the Faux Saint Army's expansion. Hence, both cities should not be moved unless absolutely necessary. This left Zero Wing City as the only option to use as a foothold in high-level neutral maps. After all, unlike Stone Forest City and Silverwing City, Zero Wing City didn't counter any player forces. Moreover, Zero Wing City's position in Star Moon Kingdom no longer brought much value to the guild. 2 hours went by quickly, and an entirely new Zero Wing City came into view. Immediately afterward, Xiaofan arrived in the City Lord's Mansion's core control room and injected 5,000 mana stones into the world mirror. He then transferred Zero Wing City to a level 140 neutral map, leaving the excited crowd outside the city dumbfounded. Chapter 28-34, New Zero Wing City. The city disappeared? What's going on? Wasn't Zero Wing supposed to get promoted into a main city? The players gathered at the Witch's Hill were inevitably confused when they saw Zero Wing City disappear all of a sudden. It just vanished into thin air. Did Zero Wing transfer the city elsewhere? That shouldn't be possible, right? This is a main city we're talking about. I looked into it before. If a main city will relocate within the borders of a country, transferring it requires not only an advanced city transfer order but also the permission of the host country. This is because a main city is deeply involved in the governance of the region it is in. A heated debate promptly arose over Zero Wing City's disappearance. Star Moon Kingdom's various powers, in particular, were nervous. After all, Zero Wing would automatically gain the ruling rights of whichever location Zero Wing City was transferred to. If this location happened to fall within their territory, they would have to say goodbye to their territory. Meanwhile, as Star Moon Kingdom's various players and powers were discussing this matter. Level 140 neutral map, Arctic Canyon, a majestic and wealthy city suddenly appeared on a cliff near the coast of this map, instantly occupying nearly half of the 20,000-yard coastline. The city faced a boundless, snowy forest and had its back to the frozen sea. It's finally my turn to control this region in this life. Xiaofan couldn't help being a little excited as he looked at the ocean view outside the city. The Arctic Canyon was a level 140 to level 160 neutral map, one of the few neutral maps on the main continent connected to the sea. The Sea of Death was near the Arctic Canyon, and by crossing the Sea of Death, one could reach the western continent. The Arctic Canyon was one of the eastern continent's closest shores to the western continent. In addition, the Arctic Canyon also lay close to the top of the world. This was a new continent that countless experts in God's domain sought to conquer. Not only was the Arctic Canyon one of the few maps that led to the top of the world, but it was also the easiest entry point to this continent, which was 100,000 meters above sea level. In the past, every inch of land in the Arctic Canyon was worth its weight in gold. It was a place where the various superpowers sought to establish a foothold, no matter the cost. However, as most of the Arctic Canyon's terrain was uneven, the map could house only a limited number of guild cities, especially guild cities at the main city standard. The Arctic Canyon could house 4 main cities and 22 ordinary guild cities at most. Guild towns couldn't survive in this place at all. Even if the town received protection from a Tier 5 player, the blizzards here would still reduce it to a pile of ruins in an instant. For a shelter to survive here, it would need to be at the advanced city standard at a minimum. With such limited space, first-rate guilds and weaker would be dreaming if they thought they could establish a foothold here. In fact, most superpowers failed to do so in Xiaofang's previous life. The 4 plots of land that could house main cities, in particular, were so heavily contested that even the 5 great super guilds met with failure. In the end, the 5 great super guilds had to share 2 of these lands, while the various superpowers shared the remaining 2. Yet, Xiaofan had now claimed the Arctic Canyon's best plot of land for himself. How could he not be excited by this situation? After all, any player that had reached level 150, Tier 4 would have to visit the top of the world. This was because this new continent held plenty of ancient treasures and legacies, all of which were crucial for these players to further improve themselves. Back then, the top of the world was such a tempting place that even Tier 3 players had come to challenge it. Unfortunately, due to the top of the world being too distant from Star Moon Kingdom, it had been completely outside Shadow's sphere of development. Hence, Xiaofan never actually set foot into the top of the world in the past. He had only ever heard stories about it. The Arctic Canyon, though, was a place he had visited in his previous life. This was because the Arctic Canyon served as a trade hub for the 2 main continents. Over 20% of the ships traveling between the 2 continents would stop at the Arctic Canyon. After all, not everyone had a flying mount, and neither was everyone capable of reaching Tier 4. The intercontinental magic arrays available had also been monopolized by the various superpowers. As a result, most trades conducted between the 2 continents were still seaborne. With this place serving as Zero Wing's base, the guild would no longer have to worry about matters relating to funds, resources, and leveling up. Even the various superpowers working together wouldn't be able to suppress Zero Wing. Next up is to set up the 12-array magic world. Shifting his gaze to the control room's core magic array, Xiaofan took out various materials he had prepared beforehand. Apart from some basic materials, the 12-array magic world also required 300,000 magic crystals, 107 luminaries crystals, and 200 magic elven stones to set up. Once operational, the magic array would need 800 mana stones every day to maintain it. Even with the Philosopher's Stone's alchemical synthesis, it would still cost 40,000 magic crystals daily. Just its maintenance could already bankrupt the average first-rate guild. An hour later, Xiaofan finished integrating the 12-array magic world with Zero Wing's core magic array. Once he injected the necessary mana stones into the magic array, he could activate it whenever he wanted. However, Xiaofan did not rush to activate the 12-array magic world. Instead, he took out a gigantic, pitch-black heart from his bag. The heart was translucent like a crystal, and one could even see it beating occasionally. This crystalline heart was one of the 2 items Beast Emperor dropped. An evil demon king's heart. It was a bona fide inferior divine artifact ranked material. The value of this item rivaled a dragon's heart. Back when Xiaofan picked up this item, he had even wondered if he had killed a Tier 5 evil demon king instead of Beast Emperor. An inferior divine artifact ranked power source was beyond extraordinary. It could even elevate a basic main city into an advanced main city. Of course, the evil demon king's heart wasn't suitable to be used as a city's power source since it contained evil energy. Using it as a city's power source would contaminate the city's mana. However, the evil demon king's heart was perfect to be used as a magic barrier's core. This was because a magic barrier exhausted the energy it was supplied with to manipulate the power of the outside world. In contrast, a city's core magic array didn't consume its supplied energy to generate results but spread the energy to all parts of the city. Previously, the 12-array magic world had given Xiaofan a headache since it was only a master magic array. Normally, only grandmaster magic arrays could cover a main city. Although the 12-array magic world was indeed powerful, it could cover only an entire basic city at best. Let's hope this thing lets the magic array undergo a qualitative transformation. Taking a deep breath, Xiaofan placed the evil demon king's heart onto the 12-array magic world's core. He then activated the magic array. Suddenly, he sensed a terrifying and violent energy flowing into the magic array. This violent energy then shattered the space above Zero Wing City through the magic array, creating a dark void with a 10,000-yard radius. Upon the appearance of this dark void, the nearby Great Lord-ranked monsters promptly fled the covered area, none of them daring to remain there. Immediately afterward, boundless mana surged out of the dark void and cascaded over Zero Wing City like a waterfall. So, this is the power of an inferior divine artifact ranked power source? Xiaofan was dumbfounded by this situation. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The present Zero Wing City already had extraordinarily dense mana due to the presence of the Mana Tower and the main city ranked core magic array. In fact, its mana was even superior to Silverwing City's. Yet, the instant the boundless mana flowing out of the dark void flooded Zero Wing City, the mana in the city had turned into mist. However, due to the 12-array magic world suppression, the misty mana actually disappeared immediately afterward, hiding within the void of this area. On the surface, it looked as if everything had reverted to its original state. In reality, though, the mana within the city had undergone a qualitative transformation. At this point, Xiaofan could sense that his perception of mana had improved by at least 150% compared to before. The affinity with and perception of mana he experienced here practically rivaled what he experienced in the NPC city he visited in the Ancient God's domain. Guild leader, how are things coming along on your side? At this time, Liang Jing suddenly contacted Xiaofan. I'm already done selecting the first batch of players to send to Zero Wing City. These players are completely loyal to us and have fought dozens of small and large battles for us. Every one of them has reached Tier 3 and possesses great potential. I believe they can adequately handle Zero Wing City's security and suppress any NPC troublemakers in the city. I'm done here too. Chuckling, Xiaofan added, however, I think it's best if you come here in person first before deciding on the exact arrangements. I've already granted you access to the city. You can teleport here through a residence now. Chapter 28-35, News of Zero Wing City. Sky Spring City, Zero Wing's residence. At this time, more than 10,000 Tier 3 experts had gathered in Zero Wing's residence in Sky Spring City. Such a force was already enough to overwhelm even first-rate guilds. Moreover, this number continued to increase as time passed. This development inevitably shocked the various powers operating within Sky Spring City. What's going on with Zero Wing? Why is it gathering so many of its Tier 3 members in its residence? Is Zero Wing planning some kind of big operation? That might be possible. After the battle at the Secret Covenant Tower, Saint's Hand declared an all-out war on Zero Wing. Meanwhile, since the popular Orc Empire is Saint's Hand's home ground, other guilds have stopped visiting Silverwing City lest they offend Saint's Hand and get targeted by those faux Saint monsters. So, there's a good chance that Zero Wing is gathering its forces for a counterattack. The various powers secretly discussed Zero Wing's purpose in gathering its forces. Many of them guessed that Zero Wing wanted to make use of its current advantage to launch a big operation. After all, now that Zero Wing had the Secret Covenant Tower as its foundation, nobody was capable of threatening the guild's existence. With Zero Wing's ability to produce a large number of Tier 3 players continuously, it wouldn't necessarily be impossible for the guild to confront Saint's Hand in the Orc Empire. At this time, the people in the outside world weren't the only ones confused by Zero Wing's sudden decision to gather its Tier 3 members. Even the players in Zero Wing's residence were confused by this situation. Fire, have you found out what is going on? Solitary Sword, the red-haired commander of the Crimson Wolf adventurer team, asked curiously as she looked at the Tier 3 summoner youth hurrying toward her. It would be hard not to notice the sudden appearance of so many Tier 3 experts in the residence. This was especially true now that so many top-tier epic weapons and equipment had appeared in Zero Wing's warehouse. In less than a day, 8 of the 100-plus epic weapons and equipment in the guild warehouse had already been claimed. And this was only the beginning. As more time passed, the various adventurer teams that had recently joined Zero Wing would accumulate more and more GCPs. Then, more and more of these epic items would get taken away. Although she had already managed to exchange for an epic headgear for swordsman, she still had her eyes on an epic weapon. So long as she could obtain this weapon, her combat power would definitely undergo a qualitative transformation. If all of these many Tier 3 experts, who had suddenly appeared in the residence, were aiming at the epic weapons and equipment, the competition would intensify sharply. "Boss," I asked around. I even asked some of the adventurer teams I have friendly relations with. However, none of them know what's going on. Even the guild's core members have no clue about this situation, the summoner youth replied, shaking his head. However, I did find out why so many Tier 3 members have gathered in Sky Spring City. It seems there's an emergency summons from the guild leader's assistant. Also, the ones summoned are all veteran members of the guild. The guild specifically summoned these core members? Solitary Sword frowned at this information. If that's the case, the guild is most likely undertaking a large-scale operation. Guilds would generally award a generous amount of contribution points to members who participated in their large-scale operations. Now that Zero Wing was gathering its veteran Tier 3 members for a large-scale operation, the competition for the epic weapons and equipment would undoubtedly intensify. While Solitary Sword worried over this situation, a large group of players suddenly entered the guild residence. Not only did none of these people wear Zero Wing's emblem, but they all exuded astonishingly powerful auras. The man leading the group even had an oppressive aura that verged on the aura of Tier 4 players. Why is Heaven's Blade's vice commander here? I heard rumors stating that Heaven's Blade became Zero Wing's subsidiary after the incident on Dragonheart Island. It seems these rumors were actually true. The arrival of Heaven's Blade's Tier 3 experts in Zero Wing's residence stunned the players idling around outside the residence. The various guild players were especially shocked. Although Heaven's Blade was only an adventurer team, it possessed incredible fame. The adventurer team even had 3 domain realm experts. Moreover, many superpowers in God's domain had tried recruiting Heaven's Blade, but the adventurer team had refused all the invitations it received. Yet, Heaven's Blade now appeared in Zero Wing's residence. Given the rumors surrounding the two organizations, Heaven's Blade's arrival was basically a declaration that the adventurer team now belonged to Zero Wing. This was absolutely bad news for the various guilds. Thus far, Zero Wing could only remain on the defensive due to a lack of manpower. However, things would definitely change now that Heaven's Blade had come under Zero Wing. Vice Commander, Zero Wing really is amazing. It already has so many Tier 3 experts now. At this rate, it won't be long before Zero Wing overtakes the various superpowers in this regard, Cleansing Flame said, sighing ruefully as she took in her surroundings. She had heard something of the battle that had taken place at the Secret Covenant Tower. At one point in the past, Heaven's Blade had been in existence that could contend against the various superpowers. At that time, the adventurer team had more experts than Zero Wing. Now, Zero Wing had become a true behemoth. Despite not being an actual superpower, it had already surpassed the various superpowers. Chuckling at Cleansing Flame's words, Divine Shadow said, "All right, let's hurry up. We shouldn't make guild leader Black Flame wait for too long." Nodding, Cleansing Flame quickly followed Divine Shadow to the Residence's guild hall. Personally, she was very curious about why Xiaofan had suddenly called for Heaven's Blade's top combatants this time. Logically, with the number of Tier 3 experts Zero Wing had assembled in Sky Spring City, it shouldn't lack manpower here. In fact, the guild should be sending more manpower to Dragonheart Island instead. After all, the exploration of the World Tower's 4th underground floor wasn't an easy task. Shortly afterward, Divine Shadow and Cleansing Flame reached the top-floor meeting room of Zero Wing's residence. At this time, the executives of Zero Wing and the Azura Adventurer team had long been waiting here. The arrival of Heaven's Blade's members confused these executives. However, as Zero Wing's and Azura's executives wondered why Xiaofan had invited Heaven's Blade's members, Xiaofan and Liang Jing also entered the room. After taking his seat, Xiaofan scanned the crowd before him and said, "Sorry for the long wait." At Xiaofang's words, everyone in the room fell silent and looked at Xiaofan with curious eyes. Liang Jing. Seeing everyone's confusion, Xiaofan chuckled and said, "Brief everyone about the specifics of the situation." In response, Liang Jing stepped up to the table and opened the booklet she held. After taking a deep breath, she said, "Everyone, I believe you should know by now that Zero Wing City has been upgraded into a main city. The reason we have gathered you here today is to discuss Zero Wing City's future development." Zero Wing City's future development? Divine Shadow found Liang Jing's explanation strange. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. If today's meeting was about Zero Wing City's future development, there should be no reason for the guild to invite Heaven's Blade to attend. After all, this was Zero Wing's internal matter. It should have nothing to do with an affiliated adventurer team. That's right. Nodding, Liang Jing said, "Before this, everyone has been wondering where Zero Wing City went. Now, I can tell everyone that Zero Wing City is currently located in the Arctic Canyon, a level 140 neutral map." After saying so, Liang Jing shared the specifics regarding the Arctic Canyon through the conference table's virtual interface. These are the Arctic Canyon's details. Feel free to study them. At Liang Jing's words, everyone promptly opened the file they received and began reading up on Arctic Canyon. After a short silence, gasps sounded in the room one after another. Chapter 2836, Zero Wing's New Benefits? The information Liang Jing provided was very detailed. According to the information, the Arctic Canyon had its back to the ocean and also served as the entrance to the top of the world. These 2 points aside, just the fact that Tier 4 legacy lands spawned in the Arctic Canyon was already more than enough to drive countless Tier 3 players wild. When everyone in the room finished reading the information provided, they could already imagine the sensation Zero Wing City would cause throughout God's domain as soon as it opened to the public. It wouldn't even be strange if Zero Wing City became the most popular city in the game. At this time, let alone Zero Wing's members, even Heaven's Blade's Divine Shadow couldn't help gazing at the information before him with passionate eyes. Although the World Tower's 4th underground floor was a good place to search for Tier 4 legacy lands, it was still significantly inferior to the Arctic Canyon. This was because the fortresses on the 4th floor were far from comparable to an actual city. Unlike fortresses, cities were made as rest areas for players. Cities addressed the various needs of players, such as providing a place for trade in the form of an auction house. Fortresses did not possess such functions. After reading the information, Fire Dance turned to Xiaofan and asked, "Guild leader, do you mean to close Zero Wing City's access to the public and have us monopolize the map for now?" Upon hearing Fire Dance's words, everyone else looked at Xiaofan curiously as well. Since today's meeting was to discuss Zero Wing City's future development, the best option would definitely be opening the city to the public right off the bat. This way, the city could rake in a fortune just from entrance fees alone. After all, with Zero Wing City's advantages, it would instantly become the most popular city in God's domain, surpassing even imperial capitals. It would become a mecca for countless Tier 3 experts. However, if Xiaofan had decided to simply open Zero Wing City to the public, there would be no point in gathering them here today. He could do so on his own volition. That's right. Now that we have secured such a big advantage, we naturally have to use it to benefit ourselves. Only after we have grown stronger will we open Zero Wing City to the public, Xiaofan said, nodding. It's just that operating a main city costs a lot. If it were an ordinary guild city, just the maintenance cost of 30,000 NPC soldiers could bankrupt several first-rate guilds. Moreover, he had enhanced the city with the 12-array magic world, further increasing the city's demand for magic crystals. Hence, he had no choice but to give up on his plan to limit access to the guild's several thousand core members. After all, a measly few thousand players could hardly cover the expenditure of such a main city. In that case, we might as well give access to all guild members. Of course, we will also have to charge an adequate fee since running a closed city is a losing business, Flying Shadow suggested. That won't do. Shaking his head, Blackie said, we have a lot of people joining Zero Wing recently. If the various powers successfully sneak some of their members into our guild, we'll suffer a huge loss. Everyone in the room nodded in agreement with Blackie. Currently, many guilds had already begun sneaking their members into Zero Wing just because of the benefits offered by the mobile fortress and the secret Covenant Tower. To counter this problem, Fire Dance had deliberately made core membership a requirement for entering the mobile fortress. To become a core member of Zero Wing, one would have to contribute a lot to the guild. It would take a new member 1 or 2 months to accumulate sufficient contributions. Only after this new regulation appeared did the various guilds dismiss their plans. However, this new regulation failed to deter the adventurer teams. Adventurer teams still joined Zero Wing one after another, all of them with the purpose of utilizing the mobile fortress's training environment. They had joined the guild solely to exploit the guild for their own benefit. Once these adventurer teams achieved their goals, there was a high chance they would just pack up and leave. Of course, Zero Wing didn't mind that much. After all, these adventurer teams would have to make the corresponding contributions to obtain the benefits they sought. At this time, Yulan suggested, how about we learn from the mobile fortress's example and let only core members enter? I'm afraid we won't have enough numbers if that's the case. Shaking her head, Liang Jing explained, based on our current estimates, we need at least 80,000 people to keep Zero Wing City running normally. Even then, we'd have to charge 1 magic crystal per person. It cost 40,000 magic crystals just to keep the 12-array magic world running. After factoring in the magic crystals needed to keep the city's various other magic arrays and constructions operating, the city would need to make at least 80,000 magic crystals per day to avoid falling into the red. Moreover, this still didn't include the cost of the 30,000 Tier 3 NPC soldiers the guild planned to recruit. That much? Yulan was slightly surprised. A daily operational cost of 80,000 magic crystals was something even the various superpowers would find hard to stomach, especially since this was only one city they were talking about. That's why Liang Jing and I plan to open Zero Wing City to the elite members of Zero Wing and Zero Wing's affiliated powers as well. However, everyone will have to cover the teleportation fees themselves. Elite members will also have to pay 3 magic crystals to enter the city, while core members will have to pay 2 magic crystals, Xiaofan said. Apart from the core members we gathered this time, everyone else will be free to choose whether they want to enter the city or not. 3 magic crystals per person? This entrance fee rendered everyone present speechless. It was undoubtedly the highest ever charged in God's domain's history. If the city were open to the public, there might still be many people entering the city despite the high cost. However, if access was limited to guild members, the number of players entering the city would be minimal. After all, players had far too few sources of magic crystals. For the average player, they could obtain magic crystals only by harvesting ores, doing quests, opening treasure chests, and raiding large-scale team dungeons. It was almost impossible for them to obtain magic crystals through standard grinding. If a player was merely seeking to level up, they would be much better off heading to the Secret Covenant Tower instead of the Arctic Canyon. As for those trying to find Tier 4 legacy lands. To put it bluntly, how many players in Zero Wing were actually confident of completing their Tier 4 promotion quests? Tier 4 legacy lands were necessary for the guild, not for the guild's members. If the average guild member found a Tier 4 legacy land, they would, at best, receive a reward from the guild. However, if obtaining this reward meant having to explore a level 140 neutral map and pay an entrance fee of 3 magic crystals, very few people would accept such a business proposition. After listening to Xiaofang's words, Cleansing Flame turned to Divine Shadow and asked quietly, "Vice Commander, should the 2 of us head to Zero Wing City and take a look first? Although we brought only core members with us this time, it would still be a considerable cost if all 2,000 of them enter the city." It would be a lie to say that they weren't tempted by the prospect of finding Tier 4 legacy lands. However, Heaven's Blade had already suffered a major loss due to its previous disbandment. Apart from some fixed assets, Heaven's Blade didn't have much resources left, and just maintaining the adventurer team's daily operation was a struggle. If they splurged their precious magic crystals now, they would be putting the cart before the horse. After all, magic crystals were different from ancient coins and standard coins. While purchasing magic crystals in small quantities was possible, purchasing them in bulk was absolutely impossible. At this stage of the game, due to the high demand for magic crystals, even the 5 great super guilds had begun publicly purchasing magic crystals. Yet, they only managed to purchase the crystals in small quantities from independent players seeking to earn credits. None of the various guilds or adventurer teams members would be dumb enough to trade magic crystals for credits. "We'll do that," Divine Shadow said, nodding. "If the Arctic Canyon is better, we can shift our base of operations to Zero Wing City instead of continuing our struggle with the various superpowers on Dragonheart Island." Shortly after Xiaofan and the others concluded their meeting, Zero Wing suddenly announced a new guild benefit on its notice board. The announcement included information on Zero Wing City's current location and the qualifications and cost of entering the city. A sensation immediately spread within the guild. Can this be considered a benefit? Although Zero Wing City's location is good, the guild is charging elite members 3 magic crystals to enter. Isn't the guild just trying to harvest us for magic crystals? That's right. That's a level 140 neutral map we're talking about. Our average level is only level 122. Even Tier 3 players will have difficulty killing the monsters in the Arctic Canyon. If the guild really wants to give us a new benefit, it should let us enter for free. However, the Arctic Canyon is an unexplored neutral map. There will be plenty of treasure chests and dungeons waiting for us. We also won't have to worry about competing with the members of the other powers. Exploring the Arctic Canyon will definitely be more profitable than exploring level 130 neutral maps. For a time, Zero Wing's members debated heatedly among themselves. While some felt that the entrance fee was too much, others felt that the benefits they could gain from the Arctic Canyon were worth the cost. "Boss, should we head to Zero Wing City?" the Tier 3 summoner youth from the Crimson Wolf Adventurer team asked Solitary Sword. Many of our team's members are planning to head to the Secret Covenant Tower to grind for levels first. They think that there's no need to explore the Arctic Canyon for now. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, of course. Why wouldn't we go? Solitary Sword said with a faint smile. I've always been thinking of finding a Tier 4 legacy land. Now that there's an opportunity before me, why wouldn't I take it? Besides, I'm curious to see what the guild's main city looks like. It's just 3 magic crystals. It's not like we're going to be operating out of Zero Wing City. Subsequently, Solitary Sword went to Sky Spring City's teleportation hall together with several dozen of her Tier 3 companions. At this time, hardly any players could be seen teleporting from Sky Spring City to Zero Wing City. The majority of Zero Wing's elite members didn't have much of a desire to visit Zero Wing City. Compared to spending 3 magic crystals to go sightseeing in Zero Wing City, they would rather spend 1 magic crystal to enter the Secret Covenant Tower and grind for levels. Shortly afterward, the teleportation hall's teleportation array leading to Zero Wing City flashed. The several hundred members standing on the teleportation array then disappeared and reappeared in the distant Zero Wing City's teleportation hall in the blink of an eye. Chapter 2837, Holy Land Zero Wing City, Teleportation Hall. Accompanied by a bright flash, several hundred players suddenly appeared on one of the teleportation arrays in the teleportation hall. With the arrival of these players, the teleportation array, which was the size of a basketball court, instantly became overcrowded. However, despite this uncomfortable situation, none of the people present raised a fuss. On the contrary, they all stood blankly on the spot as if petrified. How is this possible? How can the mana here feel so dense? Cleansing Flame, who stood among the crowd, was shocked and confused when she sensed the mana surrounding her. The ambient mana clearly wasn't a mist, yet she felt as if she had sunk into a lake the instant she arrived. This was the first time she found mana heavy. Even mana that had taken on a mist form could not compare to the density of the mana she was experiencing. The two were worlds apart from each other. After thoroughly experiencing the calm and empty feeling brought about by the surrounding mana, the astonished Cleansing Flame muttered, "Training in this magical environment will probably yield double the results compared to training in other guild cities." Although there were many items in God's domain that could help players clear up their minds and invigorate their thoughts, the effects of these items paled significantly when compared to the effects of Zero Wing City's mana. Double? You're severely underestimating this place. The mana here isn't just incredibly dense, Divine Shadow said, shaking his head. With his face blank with astonishment, he continued, "My mana affinity feels like it doubled or more. I can perceive the operating principles of mana with much greater clarity. If we train here, our training efficiency will quadruple at the very least. Moreover, this place should also be of great help toward reaching Tier 4. What made the Tier 4 promotion quest challenging wasn't just the troublesome process of finding a Tier 4 legacy land. Having to learn a Tier 4 skill or spell within a short time was also a huge hurdle. This condition placed an incredibly high demand on players' understanding of and familiarity with mana. This was akin to asking a programmer to create a game of epic proportions within a limited period. While most programmers knew the programming language necessary to create the game, not every programmer had the skill and understanding to complete the game within the time limit. Hence, apart from a small number of geniuses gifted in this regard, everyone else would face great difficulty completing this condition. In this situation, the only thing players could do to remedy this problem was improve their familiarity with and control over mana. Only, doing so was easier said than done, as very few external items in God's domain could help in this regard. Now, Zero Wing City made this possible. Upon hearing Divine Shadow's words, Cleansing Flame also focused on her affinity with the surrounding mana. Immediately afterward, an indescribable sense of shock overwhelmed her. At this time, her perception of the operating principles of mana had undergone a massive transformation. Previously, whenever she tried perceiving the operating principles of mana, it was as if a dense layer of fog hindered her perception. Without assistance from legacies and graphical introductions, she wouldn't have understood anything. Now, when she tried perceiving how mana operated, her perception was no longer as foggy as before. Instead of a dense layer of fog, it was more like a thin gauze hindered her perception. Even without concentrating, she could still perceive the operating principles with great clarity. With this improvement in her perception, she quickly found answers to the problems previously plaguing her. Now, I know why guild leader Black Flame dared to collect magic crystals so wantonly and even called this city a guild benefit. When Divine Shadow perceived his improved control over mana, he couldn't help a bitter smile. With the mana density here, he doesn't need to worry about nobody visiting the city at all. In fact, countless Tier 3 experts will probably want to enter the city. The special nature of Zero Wing City's mana simply couldn't be found in any other guild city in God's domain. This was especially true for the improved perception of the operating principles of mana. This effect could hardly be found anywhere in the continent. It also wasn't something that training could offset. At this time, Divine Shadow wasn't the only person with such thoughts. The other people standing on the teleportation array shared his outlook. Amazing. This is simply amazing. If I can stay here long term, aside from improving my combat standards, I can probably rapidly unlock my mana body to 100% completion rate, too, the Tier 3 summoner youth from Crimson Wolf exclaimed. Although he had already reached Tier 3 for some time now, he was still far from fully unlocking his mana body's potential. Meanwhile, the difference between fully unlocked and partially unlocked mana bodies was significant. Previously, he was already at the brink of despair over fully unlocking his mana body. However, he saw hope again after arriving in Zero Wing City. Moreover, he felt that his odds of success were excellent. So, this is why Zero Wing isn't afraid of making enemies of the various superpowers. With this city, Zero Wing will have to mess up very badly to fail in its development, Solitary Sword said. She, too, felt incredibly excited when she realized Zero Wing City's benefits. Previously, she had anticipated that Zero Wing City would only provide temporary shelter while she searched for Tier 4 legacy lands. Now, however, she could also use Zero Wing City to improve herself and increase her chances of promotion to Tier 4. After a brief silence, the several hundred players standing on the teleportation array could no longer suppress the restlessness in their hearts. They charged out of the teleportation hall, curious to see what the situation in Zero Wing City was like. As soon as everyone exited the building, they were dumbfounded by the sight that greeted them. Zero Wing City was practically more developed than NPC cities. Not only was the city filled with high-rises, but there were also all sorts of high-end buildings. Most importantly, this city had a battle arena. This was a place where players could conduct PvP to their heart's content. Originally, the battle arena held very little attraction for Tier 3 players. This was because the battle arena provided very little benefit to Tier 3 players, apart from the opportunity to spar against powerful experts. Only Tier 2 players and below preferred to visit the battle arena for sparring. In the present Zero Wing City, however, the battle arena had undoubtedly become the place everyone paid most attention to. All of the new arrivals in the city wished they could charge into the battle arena and start sparring immediately. As more and more players arrived in Zero Wing City, news about the city quickly spread in Zero Wing's guild channel. In less than half an hour, Zero Wing's elite members started flocking to Sky Spring City like a bunch of madmen, crowding the city's teleportation hall. Many of these elite members had to wait for several dozen minutes before they could teleport to Zero Wing City. Naturally, the mass gathering of Zero Wing's elite members resulted in information about Zero Wing City reaching the ears of the various powers and independent players. The various powers couldn't help wishing they could head to Zero Wing City and take a look at the situation there for themselves. Unfortunately, with Zero Wing's regulations, they could only watch from the sidelines. Contact Zero Wing immediately. Tell them that the Wind Valley Guild is willing to partner with them so long as they open Zero Wing City to us. Contact Zero Wing and say that the Draconic Adventurer team is willing to join Zero Wing, but Zero Wing must make all our members elite members. For a time, various guilds contacted Zero Wing for partnership, while adventurer teams sought to join the guild as a whole. There were even superpowers that made overtures to Zero Wing. Guild leader, over 40 first-rate guilds and 200 adventurer teams have contacted us already. We even received calls from 5 superpowers. All of them are either looking to form partnerships or join us with the condition of receiving access to Zero Wing City, Fire Dance reported excitedly when she read the statistical data her subordinate sent her. Some guilds are even willing to pay an entrance fee of 10 magic crystals per player. According to our current estimates, we can get an additional 500,000 players entering the city. Should we let them in? If they charged 10 magic crystals per person, they could gain an additional income of 5 million magic crystals per day. Even superpowers would go crazy from jealousy if they saw Zero Wing City raking in so many magic crystals. After all, the average superpower would have a stockpile of only several million magic crystals at this stage of the game, while Zero Wing City could earn that amount every day. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Now still isn't the time to let them enter the city, Xiaofan said, shaking his head. However, you can tell them that Zero Wing is willing to conduct some preliminary partnerships. We will offer 1 million entry slots for now. Only 1 million? Fire Dance asked, confused. Zero Wing City was already a main city. Let alone 1 million, it could easily accommodate 10 million players. Even if they excluded the slots Zero Wing needed, such a tight restriction to the entry slots shouldn't be necessary. After all, they would be making 10 magic crystals for every non-guild member that entered the city. Any guild that has signed a strategic alliance or resource alliance with Zero Wing can purchase these slots, Xiaofan said, nodding. We will auction off these slots through candlelight, with a starting bid of 10 magic crystals per slot. Auction? Fire Dance's eyes lit up in realization when she heard Xiaofang's words. I understand. I'll notify them now. Chapter 2838, Astonishing news when Fire Dance announced Zero Wing's plan to sell 1 million entry slots for Zero Wing City, a commotion broke out throughout the eastern continent. Almost every power operating on the eastern continent promptly held a meeting among their executives to discuss the entry slots. Orc Empire, Crimson Flame Fortress, how arrogant of Zero Wing. Aren't they afraid of suffering a backlash for pulling such a stunt? Snow Scar, who was now a level 130, Tier 4 Berserker, sneered as he looked at the information displayed on the conference table. They probably aren't aware that Saint's Hand has already established a city in the Black Hills, together with over a dozen superpowers. The Black Hills. This was a level 130 neutral map connected to the Valley of Death, a forbidden land. Meanwhile, the Valley of Death was also the map that current players had the best chances of exploring successfully. Although the Forbidden Land was dangerous, according to the reports of the Tier 4 experts who had explored it already, the number of Tier 4 legacy lands appearing inside far exceeded that of other places. There were also plenty of ancient ruins hidden in the map, which were of significant help with getting promoted to Tier 4. In fact, even Tier 4 players could reap a lot of benefits from these ancient ruins. In response to Snow Scar's words, Jing Yang, who was now a level 131, Tier 4 Great Wizard, turned to the woman exuding a heroic and charming aura, seated at the table's seat of honor. In a respectful tone, he said, Vice Guild Leader, Saint's Hand has sent us an invitation as well. They say they will offer us 10% of their new city's shares once it is constructed. However, we will need to garrison the city with 1 Tier 4 player and 20,000 Tier 3 players in return. How calculative of Saint's Hand. They must be aiming to have us help them deal with Zero Wing in the Orc Empire, a level 128, Tier 4 female assassin said, smirking. However, if they want to use us as pawns, don't you think that the price they're offering is too low? Snow Scar also nodded in agreement with the female assassin. The Blackwater Guild was no longer the same as it was before. Under Wuxia's lead, the guild had grown to a point where it could rival even super guilds. Moreover, unknown to the public, the guild even had 6 Tier 4 experts already. Jing Yang, tell Saint's Hand that they need to show more sincerity if they want to partner with us. We want at least 30% of the city's shares, Wuxia said, opening her eyes. Also, notify Zero Wing of Saint's Hand's actions. Tell them that Blackwater is willing to partner with Zero Wing to go up against Saint's Hand's alliance. However, in return, they must allow all of Blackwater's elite members into Zero Wing City. Vice Guild Leader, you know how Zero Wing operates. There's no way they will agree to such a condition, Jing Yang argued, feeling a headache incoming. He had negotiated with Zero Wing for partnership many times in the past, yet he had faced rejection every time. Now that Zero Wing had the potential to rival the 5 great super guilds, it had even less need to heed Blackwater's demands. It doesn't matter if they don't accept it now, Wuxia said nonchalantly. Once Saint's Hand opens their city and that side arrives, Zero Wing will have no choice but to agree to our demands. I understand. Jing Yang nodded. The current Zero Wing indeed had the qualifications to be arrogant. However, once Saint's Hand opened its city in the Black Hills, the situation would quickly reverse. After all, mainstream players were currently only at level 120. Although the Arctic Canyon was also an excellent location, it simply wasn't a place mainstream players could visit. At most, they could only make use of Zero Wing City's incredible mana environment. Not to mention, Saint's Hand's alliance consisted of more than a dozen superpowers. With the manpower and resources available to them, the alliance would soon become an existence that even the 5 great super guilds had to be wary of. At that time, Zero Wing's advantage in Tier 4 players would also disappear. However, Saint's Hand's alliance still wasn't the biggest problem Zero Wing would have to face but the world-shattering war looming over the main continent. A guild like Zero Wing, which had established a base in a level 140 neutral map, would definitely head the list of cannon fodder for this war. Currently, though, very few people in God's domain actually knew of this upcoming war. The only reason Blackwater knew about it was Wuxia's special identity. Just when Blackwater was about to notify Zero Wing of Saint's Hand's actions, Saint's Hand actually announced its astonishing plan to the entire eastern continent. Moreover, Saint's Hand even declared that it would open its city to everyone and charge a cheap entrance fee of only 1 magic crystal or 50 silver coins. As soon as this news came out, many of the first-rate powers considering partnering with Zero Wing promptly changed their minds. After all, although Zero Wing City possessed an excellent environment, the entrance fee it charged was simply beyond the various first-rate powers' means. Not to mention, the city's entry slots would be auctioned. In other words, the entry slots wouldn't cost just 10 magic crystals. By the end of the auction, each slot might actually go for 15 or even 20 magic crystals. Moreover, this was only the price to enter the city. Once inside the city, they were bound to incur all sorts of other expenditures as well. Rather than spending all those magic crystals, it would be much better to head to Saint's Hand City and explore the Valley of Death for ancient ruins and Tier 4 legacy lands. Not only could they save up on a lot of magic crystals by doing so, but their potential income was also higher. Sky Spring City, Zero Wing's residence, Guild Leader, 90% of the first-rate powers seeking to partner with us and 80% of the adventurer teams seeking to join us changed their minds after Saint's Hand's announcement, Fire Dance said, a hint of disbelief in her eyes as she read the report she just received. There won't be any competition for the entry slots. In fact, the 1 million slots we're offering exceed the remaining guild's demand. It doesn't matter. Let Saint's Hand do whatever it wants. Our plan will remain the same. We will still sell 1 million entry slots during the auction, Xiaofan said, chuckling as he looked at the statistical report. When the time comes, just sell as many slots as possible. To begin with, we're not doing this to earn magic crystals. We're just trying to keep Zero Wing City operational. You might be right, but if we have enough magic crystals, we could construct another mobile fortress, right? Fire Dance said regretfully. The magic crystals Zero Wing earned from its members visiting Zero Wing City were already more than enough to keep the city functioning normally. The only problems remaining were the recruitment and maintenance of the city's NPC soldiers. However, resolving these issues wasn't a big deal for the present Zero Wing. This was because many guild members were willing to develop themselves in Zero Wing City. There were also more than 20,000 Tier 3 experts from Heaven's Blade and Azura. In total, Zero Wing City already had an astonishing 50,000 Tier 3 players operating in it. At this point, all they needed to do was wait until the guild accumulated enough Tier 3 members to ensure Zero Wing City's security. Once the city's security was no longer a concern, they could open up the city to NPCs and begin recruiting NPC soldiers in large numbers. However, the mobile fortress's power had made a deep impression on Fire Dance. She believed it would be wonderful if Zero Wing could gain another mobile fortress. Let's not talk about getting another mobile fortress, Xiaofan said, chuckling. What we can do is further increase the number of Tier 4 players we have to improve the guild's strength. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Further increase? Fire Dance parroted, confused by Xiaofan's words. Is that even doable? Producing Tier 4 players was easier said than done. Finding Tier 4 legacy lands was one thing, mastering a Tier 4 skill or spell within the allotted time was another thing altogether. The help Zero Wing City's environment provided for this aspect could already be regarded as the best available in God's domain. She found it hard to imagine other ways to help Zero Wing produce even more Tier 4 players. Of course. Smiling, Xiaofan said, contact Summer and the others and have them gather in Zero Wing City's City Lord's mansion. If it were before he had visited the ancient god's domain, he would indeed have no way of accomplishing such a feat. However, after his trip to the ancient era, he did. And that was by using the ancient beast sculpture. Chapter 2839, Statues Astonishing Function Zero Wing City, City Lord's Mansion, Alluring Summer, Shadow Sword, Turtledove, Cola, Yulan, Blackie, Flying Shadow, Silent Blade, Stubborn Bone, Yi Wumian, Rampant Blade, Su Qianlu, Minor Wind, and Graceful Moon gathered in the second underground floor of the City Lord's Mansion after receiving Fire Dance's summons. Looking at Fire Dance, who was guiding their group, Cola asked curiously, "Commander, why did the guild leader suddenly have us come over?" At Cola's question, the others in the group also looked at Fire Dance curiously. For the sake of raising their chances of getting promoted to Tier 4, they had all focused on training in the battle arena recently to improve their control over mana. In Zero Wing City's mana environment, their control over mana had improved at a noticeable rate. Among them, Alluring Summer had become a master magician and even gained her own mana domain. Her achievements had spurred the rest of them to train even more zealously. Yet, instead of letting them focus on their training, Fire Dance had suddenly summoned them here. "It's a secret," Fire Dance answered with a smile. "Moreover, this trip will be beneficial for you. You might even increase your chances of getting promoted to Tier 4 by a large margin." Fire Dance naturally knew of everyone's desire to get promoted to Tier 4. After all, Zero Wing City's environment was greatly beneficial to even a Tier 4 player like herself, let alone Tier 3 players. Moreover, in the current God's domain, Tier 3 players couldn't make any waves at all. Only by reaching Tier 4 would a player have an impact on the big picture. Are you trying to trick us, Commander? We already have Zero Wing City's environment to help us. Is there really another way to increase our chances of promotion further? Shadow Sword asked skeptically. However, he couldn't help growing a little eager and excited at Fire Dance's answer. He understood very clearly that with his current standards, it would be incredibly difficult for him to get promoted to Tier 4, even with the support of Zero Wing City's excellent environment. It would most likely take him several attempts before he could get promoted. And worse, players who failed their Tier 4 promotion quest had to wait for a long period before they could re-challenge their promotion quest. Even if he could find another Tier 4 legacy land quickly, he would still have to wait up to a month. If he suffered consecutive failures, it could very well take him up to half a year or possibly more to reach Tier 4. If he were to hover at Tier 3 for half a year, he simply couldn't imagine how far he would fall behind the current Tier 4 players. After all, there were still many places in God's domain that only Tier 4 players and above could set foot in. Meanwhile, the opportunities, legacies, and items available in these forbidden lands were far superior to what other maps provided. That was what the guild leader said, Fire Dance said, nodding. Otherwise, he wouldn't have interrupted your training spree and called you here. After saying so, Fire Dance stopped before a stone door sealed by a magic array. Standing guard beside this stone door were 4 level 140, Tier 3 fine gold guards. Even if a Tier 4 player came here, they shouldn't think of getting past these NPCs quickly. When the 4 NPCs saw Fire Dance, they promptly removed the seal on the stone door. Subsequently, the stone door parted slowly, revealing a room the size of a basketball court. Many magic arrays isolated the room. Even if a Tier 4 player made a ruckus inside the room, their actions would go unnoticed in the outside world. Xiaofan was waiting inside the isolated room. After glancing at everyone, Xiaofan said, "Come on in." In response to Xiaofan's words, Fire Dance entered the room curiously, followed by the rest of the group shortly afterward. After everyone entered the room, the 4 guards outside the room closed the door and quietly stood watch by the door, none of them daring to relax for even a moment. Having entered the room, Fire Dance and the others couldn't help looking at Xiaofan in confusion. This was because even after entering the isolated room, they failed to sense anything special about it. In fact, the mana density inside the room even seemed slightly lower compared to outside. Upon seeing everyone's confusion, Xiaofan smiled and said, "You must be wondering why I summoned you to such a place, right? Guild leader, the commander said you have a way to further increase our chances of getting promoted to Tier 4. Unable to hold back his curiosity any longer, Kola asked, "Is that true?" Truthfully, Kola didn't have much confidence in getting promoted to Tier 4 since his combat standard was still stuck at the flowing water realm even now. His control over mana was also only at the advanced magician standard. It was basically impossible for him to learn a Tier 4 legacy skill within a short period. It's true. However, how much improvement you gain will depend on yourselves, Xiaofan said, nodding. He then pointed at the ancient beast statue set up in the center of the room and continued, "This thing is the key to your promotion to Tier 4. A statue? Everyone present grew even more confused when they heard Xiaofan's words. Even Fire Dance was no exception. Although the statue in front of them looked exquisite, no matter how they looked at it, it did not seem like a tool that could help them reach Tier 4. "Observe it from a closer distance," Xiaofan said, chuckling. "But don't use your eyes, use your whole body to perceive it." The ancient beast statue was an incomparably mysterious object, and it was incredibly difficult for someone to notice its uniqueness. This was because the ancient beast statue would reveal its properties only in an environment with incredibly dense mana. Moreover, these properties were noticeable only at close distance. If one stood too far away from the statue, one wouldn't sense anything special about it. In fact, Placing the statue in a room would even cause the density of the mana in the room to drop. In the past, some players had even treated the ancient beast statues as junk and sold them cheap. At Xiaofang's advice, Kola and the others approached the statue. And when everyone got within 10 yards of the ancient beast statue, their expressions promptly changed. How is this possible? The operating principles of mana have become much clearer. There's at least a 50% improvement. As a Tier 4 player, Fire Dance was the quickest to notice the changes the ancient beast statue brought about, and she couldn't help gaping at the statue in disbelief. Assuming that she could view the operating principles of mana at only 10% clarity under normal circumstances, then in Zero Wing City's environment, she could view the operating principles at 20% clarity. However, standing beside the ancient beast statue, she could view the operating principles at 30% clarity. Kola and the others did not achieve as good a result as Fire Dance since they were still at Tier 3, however, they still managed to achieve a clarity of at least 20%. At this time, their perception of the operating principles of mana was superior to the average Tier 4 players. Now, they were basically viewing the world around them from a higher perspective than even Tier 4 players. As Tier 3 players, the benefits they could gain from such an experience were immeasurable. If this situation leaked to the public, the various powers of God's domain would most likely go crazy. Fire Dance finally understood why Xiaofan had instructed her to be extremely careful when coming to this place and even limiting the people she could invite to only the guild's core executives. The next moment, the isolated room fell indescribably quiet. This was because Kola, Alluring Summer, and everyone else had wholeheartedly thrown themselves into their enhanced perception with no intention of exiting this immersion. Xiaofan did not find this situation surprising either. After obtaining world authority, his perception of the operating principles of mana had reached an incredibly high level. Within the ancient beast statue's vicinity, he could even achieve a 40% clarity. Back when he was controlling Ferbero, a half-step demon king, he had only managed to achieve a 50% clarity, yet he already had a feeling of invincibility. Of course, this was only a misconception arising from suddenly obtaining so much power. Even so, the brief experience of viewing the world through Ferbero's senses had provided him with immense help in developing his mana body and improving his control over mana. Although he didn't get the same feeling when standing next to the ancient beast statue, he was relatively close to that feeling already. And while subject to this sensation, even he couldn't help wishing he could disregard all his duties and focus solely on researching the operating principles of mana, so what more Kola and the others? Shortly after Fire Dance immersed herself in her enhanced perception, the mana around her body began rampaging. It was evident that she was trying to break through her mana body's 100% threshold. Xiaofan was slightly surprised to see this. He then took out a colorful crystal from his bag and handed it to Fire Dance, saying, "Don't rush to break through yet. Do it after you finish learning the legacy inside this thing." In response to Xiaofang's words, Fire Dance halted her attempt to break through and accepted the memory crystal. However, after checking the memory crystal, she was stunned. She never thought that Xiaofan would actually possess such a precious legacy. Moreover, the legacy recorded in the memory crystal even contained information on how to reconstruct one's mana body. For Tier 4 players like herself, this information was priceless. Guild leader, this is a Sword Saint's legacy. Giving it to me would be wasteful, Fire Dance said hesitantly. She was no fool. Anyone who had gotten promoted to Tier 4 would know what was most important to a Tier 4 player, achieving a breakthrough in one's mana body and reconstructing it. This was the basis of getting promoted to Tier 5. However, Xiaofan simply chuckled and said, "Relax. This is a complete legacy crystal. It can be used up to 9 times. Every person will get the best result from the crystal only on their first use. Using it more than once would be a waste. Now that you are one of Zero Wing's key combatants, it will be of great help to the guild if you can further improve yourself." Teresa had given him a complete Tier 5 legacy crystal that could be used 9 times. And although it was a Sword Saint's legacy, as the swordsman and assassin classes were both physical classes, an assassin could still gain significant help from the legacy. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. If Fire Dance could elevate her mana body's potential to 105% due to this legacy crystal, it would be of significant help to the present Zero Wing. Since Xiaofan wasn't accepting any argument, Fire Dance eventually gritted her teeth and activated the memory crystal. After all, what Xiaofan said was true. There were significant differences even between Tier 4 players. Take Violet Cloud, for example. Because she had long since broken through her mana body's 100% threshold, her combat power had surpassed Fire Dance's by a large margin as soon as she reached Tier 4. If Fire Dance could break through the 100% threshold now, she would be able to hold her ground even against monstrously strong Tier 4 experts. Immediately, the colorful crystal in Fire Dance's hand released several streaks of light that flowed straight into her eyes. Simultaneously, a large amount of information was transmitted directly into her brain. Chapter 2840, Consecutive Breakthroughs. As information from the Sword Saint's legacy flooded Fire Dance's mind, the mana she exuded strengthened and weakened in intervals. It was evident that she had received a lot of inspiration from the legacy. Both her control over mana and understanding of mana rose at a visible rate. Seeing this development, Xiaofan couldn't help growing envious. Truthfully, he had constantly been thinking of using the Sword Saint's legacy himself ever since he received it. However, he also understood that he wouldn't benefit much from it. This was because the current bottleneck he faced wasn't related to mana but his concentration. To raise the strength of his mana body to a whole new level, he needed to raise his concentration to a point where he could control his mana body with a threefold manipulation method. Hence, using the Sword Saint's legacy now would simply be a waste. I should start training and adapting to a threefold manipulation method as well. Xiaofan smiled involuntarily when he saw everyone in the room improving rapidly. Then, he sat down and began his own training. Back when he was in the Ancient God's domain, his concentration standard had only been at the Tier 4 intermediate standard. Among Tier 4 existences, that wasn't anything to brag about. However, merging with the Tier 4 Hellfire had thoroughly tempered his concentration. He now estimated that his concentration was at the Tier 4 peak standard already. He should be only one step away from reaching the Tier 5 standard and achieving world creation. Of course, just elevating his concentration standard to Tier 5 wouldn't be enough to achieve world creation. He would still need to become a Grandmaster Magician first. This was also the main reason many players and NPCs couldn't achieve world creation even after reaching Tier 5. After all, becoming a Grandmaster Magician was incredibly challenging. Generally, most people capable of becoming a Grandmaster Magician were lifestyle Grandmasters. Yet, most of these lifestyle Grandmasters were unsuited for combat and were incapable of reaching Tier 5, only reaching Tier 4 at best. This situation was especially obvious among players. In the past, over 70% of experts that had achieved world creation were lifestyle Grandmasters stuck at Tier 4, and many experts who had risen to Tier 5 couldn't help envying those players. After all, the disparity in combat power between individuals with and without world creation was like the difference between heaven and earth. Even at Tier 5, world creation could still influence a battle. Following which, time passed swiftly. In the blink of an eye, half a day had gone by already. Amid Xiaofang's repeated attempts at executing a threefold manipulation method, the mana Fire Dance exuded suddenly skyrocketed in intensity. Her rapid transformation even kicked up a mana storm, the phenomenon startling everyone in the room. What's going on with this fire? The mana she's exuding is so powerful. Flying Shadow exclaimed. He was thunderstruck when he saw the white mist wreathing Fire Dance's body. She should have broken through her mana body's limits, Turtledove said enviously. No, this shouldn't be just a simple breakthrough, Alluring Summer said, shaking her head. I've broken through the 100% threshold as well, yet compared to Fire Dance right now, the phenomenon my breakthrough created was much weaker. Even if she achieved her breakthrough at Tier 4, the reaction shouldn't be so exaggerated. Alluring Summer had much greater authority when talking about breaking through the mana body's limits since she had unlocked her mana body to 102% potential already. Back when Alluring Summer broke through, her mana body had indeed undergone a qualitative transformation and provoked a powerful reaction in her surroundings. However, that reaction was much more subdued than Fire Dance's. At this time, the mana surrounding Fire Dance was already almost liquid. Even if Alluring Summer factored in the special environment of this room and the fact that Fire Dance was at Tier 4, a breakthrough in the mana body's limit still shouldn't generate such a powerful reaction. Several more minutes later, Fire Dance finally stabilized her mana, and an excited expression immediately appeared on her face. Guild leader, I succeeded. Fire Dance said as she looked at Xiaofan excitedly. My mana body is currently at a 107% completion rate. If you give me a little more time, I can even reach 110%. She had heard plenty regarding the mana body from Xiaofan. According to him, after breaking through the 100% threshold, the mana body would see further qualitative transformations at the 105% and 110% thresholds. Although she had yet to reach a 110% completion rate, with the information the Sword Saint's legacy provided and the Ancient Beast statue's effect, she was now confident of reaching that threshold. At that time, her combat power would definitely surpass Violet Cloud's. After all, Violet Cloud's mana body was only at a 108% completion rate right now. You reached 107% on the first breakthrough? Xiaofan was shocked. Normally, a player couldn't reach or exceed 105% on their first breakthrough. Even Violet Cloud was no exception. After all, players would need to overhaul the method they used to manipulate their mana body to reach this threshold. Nevertheless, Fire Dance had skated through this process. The improvement she achieved was beyond remarkable. That Sword Saint had a very thorough understanding of the mana body. His explanations were also simple to understand. It's a pity that I'm not a swordsman myself. Otherwise, I would have improved even more, Fire Dance said regretfully. If this legacy is given to Shadow Sword and the others, they should have a very easy time breaking through the 110% threshold. If you used it, you would probably achieve even more astonishing results, Guild Leader. The legacy actually has such great effects. Xiaofan couldn't help feeling tempted by Fire Dance's words. However, he still suppressed his agitated heart in the end and said calmly, I'll pass for now. However, we can let Shadow Sword and the other swordsmen use the legacy once they reach Tier 4. Anyone with a physical class can also use it if they manage to break through the 100% threshold. Xiaofan was indeed very tempted to use the Sword Saint's legacy and go beyond his mana body's present 110% completion rate. He might even be lucky enough to reach a 115% completion rate. If that happened, he would have full confidence in completing the Divine Dragon's trial. However, his current priorities were developing his concentration standard and improving his understanding of magic arrays. So long as he succeeded in doing so, combined with the Sword Saint's legacy, he could develop his mana body beyond even a 115% completion rate. In fact, once he reached level 150, he could even start trying to create a personalized mana body. After all, not every Tier 5 expert in the past had started creating personalized mana bodies only after exceeding the 110% completion rate. Many of these Tier 5 experts had tried and succeeded even at 109% and 110%. This was because there was no integral connection between a mana body's completion rate and the creation of a personalized mana body. Having a higher completion rate only meant that a player was more familiar with the mana body they currently had. At most, this familiarity would grant the player an easier time in creating a personalized mana body. It wasn't essential. As for the matter of sharing the Sword Saint's legacy, if it were possible, he would prefer to let only Tier 4 swordsmen use it. However, given the circumstances, Zero Wing didn't have 7 more Tier 4 swordsmen suitable. Hence, he had no choice but to loosen the condition. That way, the guild could produce more above-average Tier 4 players. I understand. Fire Dance nodded. Over the next 10 days, Zero Wing's core executives achieved significant breakthroughs one after another, thanks to the ancient beast statue. In addition, as the guild had discovered quite a number of Tier 4 legacy lands in the Arctic Canyon, everyone began challenging their Tier 4 promotion quests. As for Fire Dance, after reaching a 110% completion rate with her mana body, she led an exploration team into the Arctic Canyon, drastically increasing Zero Wing's income, particularly of top-tier level 130+ equipment and materials. The amount of equipment and materials Zero Wing was currently raking in surpassed even that of ordinary superpowers. Among the harvests Zero Wing made, the most notable one was 7 Luminaries crystals. Because the Arctic Canyon's team dungeons dropped small quantities of 7 Luminaries crystals, Zero Wing earned over 600 units of 7 Luminaries crystal in just 10 short days. Even Xiaofan was astonished by this harvest. He never thought that the Arctic Canyon would be so rich in resources. Fire Dance's team was responsible for more than half of the 7 Luminaries crystals earned. At this time, he could already foresee that once Zero Wing gained more and more Tier 4 players, the guild's income of 7 Luminaries crystals would reach staggering levels. Meanwhile, Xiaofan had been relatively free compared to Fire Dance and the others these past 10 days. He was also only half a step away from successfully implementing the threefold manipulation method on his mana body. However, during this time, huge events had also taken place in God's domain one after another. Firstly, there was the appearance of Saint Heart City. Secondly, the various superpowers had received news that Lu Xinglua had his qualifications as the Starline Corporation's heir stripped due to his numerous failures and that his game account had gotten crippled. This unexpected development placed heavy pressure on the heirs of the major corporations leading the various superpowers. Thirdly, the first batch of players belonging to Zero Wing's allies had entered Zero Wing City. When these 20,000 players entered the city, Zero Wing's allies instantly understood Zero Wing City's value. For a time, Zero Wing City's entry slots enjoyed even greater popularity. However, the best piece of news for Zero Wing was Gentle Snow, Aqua Rose, Zhao Yueru, Yen Tianxing, and Yi Luofei's successful promotion to Tier 4. Their success had instantly boosted Zero Wing's overall combat power by a large margin, and exploring the Arctic Canyon became a lot easier. Zero Wing City, Candlelight Trading Firm, Special Forging Room. Sure enough, breaching the Grandmaster Magician threshold isn't an easy task. A pale-faced Xiaofan smiled bitterly as he looked at the Tier 3 mana set equipment he had just produced. After several days of research, he concluded that only 2 methods would let him achieve threefold manipulation, developing his concentration to the Tier 5 standard and becoming a Grandmaster Magician. For the time being, developing his concentration to the Tier 5 standard was nigh impossible since it required fortuitous encounters and undergoing tempering. This left him with raising his magician rank. Producing Tier 3 mana set equipment was one of the ways that could help him do so because the most difficult aspect of producing the set was engraving its magic array. Although the system deemed the set's magic array as only a master magic array, it rivaled even Grandmaster magic arrays in complexity. If he could successfully engrave the entire magic array in one go, he wouldn't be far off from becoming a Grandmaster Magician. Unfortunately, even after working for several days consecutively and producing more than 200 sets of Tier 3 mana set equipment, he still couldn't engrave the set's magic array in one go. He felt as if an invisible barrier was preventing him from advancing. Meanwhile, Xiaofan also happened to reach level 150, the threshold where he could get promoted to Tier 5. Guild leader, you previously asked the Boulder Corporation to look into Phoenix Rain's little sister, right? At this time, Liang Jing suddenly contacted Xiaofan. They just sent back news that Phoenix Rain's little sister should be staying in Haitian City's upper zone. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ew, alright, got it. Nodding, Xiaofan promptly chose to log out of God's domain and decided to pay Haitian City's upper zone. Apart from checking up on Phoenix Rain's little sister, he could also use this opportunity to broaden his business circle to Haitian City's upper zone. Every upper zone had its own contribution competition. Since the various corporations were placing such heavy importance on this season's competition, it would be a huge waste not to take advantage of it and make a killing. After all, Zero Wing was already a massive organization that had many mouths to feed. A large number of newcomers with great potential had even joined the guild's headquarters recently. There were also the resources needed to nurture Zero Wing's executives. With all the guild's resource requirements, simply relying on the 5 states corporation would be far from enough. Chapter 2841, Mental Strength Training House Haitian City, Upper Zone. A luxury hover car slowly landed in front of the upper zone's entrance. A man and a woman then got out of the car, their appearance instantly attracting the hundreds of teenage boys and girls waiting by the entrance. This man and woman were none other than Xiaofan and Mushin. However, all of the teenagers focused on Mushin, their eyes filled with surprise and confusion. Why is the Boulder Corporation's heir here at Haitian City's upper zone? Could she be transferring to our upper zone? That's impossible. I heard that Mushin broke through recently and acquired Grade 1 authority in Yuantian City's upper zone. Moreover, not only does she have the Boulder Corporation's full support, but the base layer's supervisor is also quite supportive of her. At this rate, she might enter the middle layer of Yuantian City's upper zone. Why would she want to come to our upper zone? The teenage boys and girls began a heated discussion among themselves when they saw Mushin. They couldn't understand why a big shot like her would suddenly come to Haitian City's upper zone. Mushin, on the other hand, paid no attention to the teenagers discussing her. She behaved as if these people did not exist at all. Why are there so many people taking Haitian City's test? It's more than 10 times the number I saw at Yuantian City, Xiaofan asked, astonished when he saw the crowd thronging the entrance. When he took the test to enter Yuantian City's upper zone, there had only been several dozen other people taking the test with him. Such a huge difference between upper zones was incredible. Haitian City's upper zone is more populous than Yuantian City's upper zone. It was also constructed a little earlier. Looking at the teenagers waiting by the entrance, Mushin shook her head and explained, however, these people aren't talents the Green God Company is nurturing internally. They were born inside Haitian City's upper zone. Also, this place is holding its annual evaluation, which is why so many people are here. The corporations behind these people will use the test results to determine their future successors and daily resource allocations. For these people, this period will most likely be the most competitive period of their lives. At this point, a hint of frustration darkened Mushin's eyes. It was precisely because of this competition that her relationship with Kurue wasn't particularly good. Compared to life in the outside world, life in an upper zone was much harsher. I see. So that's why these children have such astonishing physical fitness, Xiaofan commented. When he looked at the teenagers before him, he couldn't help sighing ruefully. He had to admit that the upper zone's children were indeed amazing. From what he could see, every one of these teenagers could easily beat up martial artists below the master standard. This wasn't a standard the youths born and living in the outside world could match. Having such amazing physical fitness at such a young age, these teenagers would become even more amazing once they entered God's domain. Let alone reaching Tier 4, they could very well reach Tier 5. At this moment, Xiaofan finally understood why the various superpowers had so many Tier 4 and Tier 5 experts. He could produce many Tier 4 experts just from the group of youngsters in front of him. Let's hurry inside. Taking a look at the time, Wuxia said, if we wait until the mental path activates, like last time, it'll be even more difficult to find that girl you mentioned. After all, we are residents of Yuantian City's upper zone, not of Haitian City's upper zone. Xiaofan nodded in response and followed Wuxia straight into Haitian City's upper zone. Although a person could freely visit all upper zones once they had a registered ID, the upper zones operated like independent organizations and competed with each other. In fact, some of the tasks the Green God Company assigned to the various upper zones were dependent on the performance of each upper zone. Hence, the residents of every upper zone were somewhat hostile toward the residents of other upper zones. Under normal circumstances, an upper zone's resident wouldn't visit another upper zone. After all, one mistake could easily result in a fight. Upon seeing Wuxia and Xiaofan walking straight into the upper zone, the teenagers standing by the entrance couldn't help envying them. This was because people older than 20 who could enter the upper zone directly had already obtained IDs in the upper zone. These people wouldn't have to struggle to enter the upper zone, unlike themselves. Who's that man? Why is a person like Wuxia escorting him? He might be the son of some big shot living on the middle layer. Otherwise, why would someone of Wuxia's standing guide him? Damn it. This is too enviable. If I were the son or nephew of a mental strength master, I wouldn't have to struggle here so desperately. I could even enter one of the middle layer's mansions for training. At this time, the teenagers waiting by the entrance couldn't help gazing at Xiaofan with jealous eyes. As children of major corporations, they might be objects of envy for the people living in the outside world, but they were nothing in the upper zone. Only the big shots living in the upper zone's middle layer would garner respect from the upper zone's residents. After entering Haitian City's upper zone, Xiaofan found that this place was indeed more populous than Yuantian City's upper zone. In fact, one could even consider it more prosperous. Not only were there high-rises all over the upper zone, but there was also something called the Mental Strength Training House here. Such a facility did not exist in Yuantian City's upper zone. The Mental Strength Training House wasn't particularly large. The entire building was only 2 stories tall, with the footprint of a basketball court. Yet, a crowd waited to enter this small building, including children of major corporations and the Green God Company's talents. There were even direct successors of major corporations standing in line. This was a sight that definitely couldn't be found in Yuantian City's upper zone. In fact, even Wuxia felt an urge to enter the mental strength training house when she saw it. However, she could only let this urge fade away. This was because the notice outside the training house very clearly stated that only those with Grade 2 authority or above in Haitian City's upper zone could use the training house. People of other upper zones would not be allowed entry at all. Aren't upper zones open to all residents with ID? Xiaofan was confused when he saw the notice. Why is there such a rule in Haitian City's upper zone? Isn't this unfair to people of other upper zones? The upper zone placed extreme importance on mental strength. One could easily imagine how attractive a place capable of helping a person improve their mental strength would be for the residents of the various upper zones. There's no helping this. The Mental Strength Training House is a resource Haitian City's upper zone won after competing with the other upper zones. Hence, the Green God Company gave the residents of Haitian City's upper zone exclusive use of it. It is also why many more corporations are willing to invest in Haitian City compared to the other upper zones, Wuxia said, shaking her head. A bitter smile appearing on her face, she added, if not for the Boulder Corporation having deep roots in Yuantian City, we would have most likely moved the focus of our development to Haitian City already. Wuxia's words didn't particularly surprise Xiaofan. Although he had not experienced the training house's effects, mental strength was everything in the upper zone. It would naturally be very attractive to the various corporations. In fact, Xiaofan also felt tempted to transfer to Haitian City's upper zone. After all, his concentration was currently bottlenecked at the Tier 4 peak standard. Thus far, he had already used 3 phantom potions, yet he was still nowhere near the Tier 5 concentration standard. While Xiaofan and Mushin were conversing, an argument suddenly broke out in front of the training house. Lu Tiendi, I've already said my adventurer team will never join you. A fair-skinned girl sporting a double ponytail and wearing light blue sportswear glared at a handsome and dapper young man in his early 20s, her eyes blazing with indescribable rage. However, the young man in question paid no heed to the girl's anger at all. Instead, a robust, middle-aged man standing beside him smiled and said, "Miss Ji Luorong, you are free to refuse my young master's invitation, but if you do, you can forget about obtaining resources from anyone in this upper zone from now on. You should understand very clearly that my young master has the power to blacklist you." You. None of the people present dared to refute the middle-aged man's words. In fact, nobody stepped forward to champion the girl. This was because Lu Tiendi was the Starline Corporation's new heir. With the Starline Corporation's influence in Haitian City's upper zone, it would be child's play for it to prevent the upper zone's residents from selling resources to a specific individual. Looking at the girl named Ji Luorong, the middle-aged man chuckled and said, "Miss Ji, I advise you to listen obediently to my young master's words and have your entire adventurer team join us. Otherwise, you shouldn't think of staying in Haitian City's upper zone anymore because nobody here will sell you any resources. You shouldn't even think of asking your older sister for help either." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. At the middle-aged man's words, many of the corporate children present looked at Ji Luorong sympathetically. In Haitian City's upper zone, even major corporations wouldn't dare to offend the Starline Corporation outright, let alone an individual with no background. If Ji Luorong refused Lu Tiendi's demand, everyone could already foresee the girl having to leave the upper zone shortly after due to a lack of resources. However, as Ji Luorong remained silent, the middle-aged man smiled triumphantly, and the spectating crowd sighed ruefully. A low voice suddenly resounded in the area. "Is that so? What if I want to sell resources to this young lady?" Chapter 2842, Silent Upper Zone. A deathly silence suddenly fell over the area as everyone turned toward the voice's origin. What entered everyone's sight was an ordinary-looking young man clad in dark gray casual wear. Besides his ordinary appearance, the young man also felt no different from an ordinary passerby. This person was none other than Xiaofan. Although he had grown a lot taller as his physical fitness improved, he still couldn't change his plain appearance. Who is that guy? Isn't he a little too courageous? That guy is dead for sure. Even the successors of the other major corporations here wouldn't dare blatantly refute Lu Tiendi's words. Could this guy be a newcomer to the upper zone? The gathered people were astonished as they looked at Xiaofan. They never imagined that such an ignorant person could exist in Haitian City's upper zone. If it were the Starline Corporation of the past, there would still be many people who would dare go against it. They definitely wouldn't let Lu Tiendi, who was merely the corporation's heir, act so arrogantly. Even Lu Xinglua, the corporation's previous heir, hadn't dared behave like Lu Tiendi was behaving now. However, Lu Tiendi's background was different from Lu Xinglua's. Lu Tiendi had caught the eye of one of the middle layer's big shots at a young age and had been secretly nurtured by this big shot since then. Only after Lu Tiendi had replaced Lu Xinglua as the Starline Corporation's new successor had this matter gotten exposed. Due to this revelation, the Starline Corporation's status in Haitian City's upper zone had instantly skyrocketed. Now, even the other major corporations operating in the base layer had no choice but to tuck their tails in front of the Starline Corporation. Otherwise, Kue, Lu Tiendi's butler, wouldn't have dared to be so arrogant, openly making such a bold statement in public. Ji Luorong, who had been standing silently in front of the training house all this time, couldn't help turning to Xiaofan in surprise and confusion. She never thought that someone would be willing to stand up for her. At the same time, though, she couldn't help worrying for Xiaofan. This was because she was well aware of Lu Tiandi's extraordinary identity. He was destined to live in the middle layer, and even the Green God Company would have to show him a certain degree of respect. "Kid, it seems you're quite courageous, huh? Do you not know who my young master is?" Ikue asked as he looked at Xiaofan coldly. "Or do you intend to make an enemy of the Starline Corporation?" Ikue had just stated that so long as Lu Tiandi gave the word, nobody in Haitian City's upper zone would dare trade resources with Ji Luorong. Yet, no sooner had he made this declaration than Xiaofan announced his intention to trade with Ji Luorong. Xiaofan had basically slapped the Starline Corporation's face. Upon hearing Ikue's words, many people present frowned at Xiaofan worriedly. Everyone could tell that Ikue was up to no good. The middle-aged man was escalating a trivial matter into a problem that concerned the reputation of the entire Starline Corporation. If Xiaofan dared to say anything more now, the consequences were unimaginable. He might even face a similar end as Ji Luorong's and get kicked out of the upper zone eventually. After all, it was incredibly difficult to live in the upper zone without resources. When Ji Luorong heard Ikue's words, she gritted her teeth and resolved to stop Xiaofan from championing her. However, just as she was about to take action, a lithe figure suddenly appeared before her. "Little girl, you don't need to worry about him," Mushin said. Looking at Ji Luorong's worried expression, Mushin smiled and continued, "Even the Starline Corporation wouldn't dare do anything against him." Xiaofan not only possessed Grade 1 authority in the upper zone but was also a neutralizing grandmaster. Let alone the measly heir of the Starline Corporation, even if the Starline Corporation's current owner were here, he wouldn't be able to do anything against Xiaofan. Looking at Mushin's dazzling beauty, Ji Luorong could tell that Mushin had an extraordinary background, which should mean that Xiaofan did as well. However, she still couldn't help worrying. But, before Ji Luorong could say anything more, however, a low voice resounded throughout the area once more. "So what if I am?" These 5 simple words instantly created a commotion among the spectating crowd. Is he crazy? He's actually openly making an enemy of the Starline Corporation? Does he not know what death is? If it were the Starline Corporation of the past, even the upper zone's ordinary corporate children wouldn't fear offending it. After all, they were all residents of the upper zone's base layer. Why should they be afraid of each other? However, the situation was different now that the Starline Corporation had the backing of a middle-layer big shot. That big shot could just make some random excuse and have them removed from the upper zone temporarily. Once they were outside the safe haven known as the upper zone, the Starline Corporation would have plenty of means to deal with them. Upon hearing Xiaofang's response, Ikue was momentarily dumbfounded as well. After snapping out of his daze, he bellowed, "Punk! It seems you really are itching for a beating. In that case, I'll help you loosen those bones of yours." Although the Green God Company prohibited fighting in the upper zone, the company would turn a blind eye to small conflicts in private settings. So long as one did not go too far, the Green God Company wouldn't look too deeply into the matter. After all, disputes were bound to occur wherever people gathered. However, if anyone dared to take things too far, the Green God Company was bound to dish out a severe penalty. In fact, many corporations and forces had gotten banished from the upper zone and suffered an early demise because they had crossed this line. Hence, nobody would dare to openly defy the Green God Company's rules. The next moment, Ikue stomped his right foot on the ground, and his body shot forward like a cannonball. The impact of his feet shook the ground slightly and even left a deep footprint behind on the cement. As his body shot forward, Ikue punched, perfectly integrating his fist speed with the speed of his moving body. His fist generated explosive noises due to this perfect combination as it collided with the air. Evidently, his punch had already exceeded the speed of sound. A sonic boom? He's a Henglian Grandmaster. When everyone heard the explosive noises, they stared at Yi Kuei in shock. The upper zone's environment allowed one to develop one's physical fitness rapidly. In fact, even developing one's physical fitness to the standard of a Henglian Master or a half-step Henglian Grandmaster wouldn't be a problem. However, those who could actually overcome the final hurdle and become a Henglian Grandmaster were incredibly rare. Even in the upper zone, such people were considered top-tier experts and treated as VIPs by major corporations. These corporations would even be willing to grant a Henglian Grandmaster the position of elder to rope in such individuals. This was because every Henglian Grandmaster was no different from a humanoid beast. Hence, everyone couldn't believe that Yi Kuei was serving as a mere butler of a corporation successor, despite being a Henglian Grandmaster. Let alone the spectators, even Mushin was astonished by this situation. Only two people weren't surprised by this situation, Lu Tiandi and Ji Luorong. It's over. Ji Luorong reflexively shut her eyes at this sight. She had found out that Yi Kuei was a Henglian Grandmaster only because Yi Kuei himself had revealed his strength to her during one of their previous meetings. Hence, she knew that Yi Kuei wasn't just an ordinary butler but was also a terrifying bodyguard. If Xiaofan got struck by Yi Kuei's punch, he would be fortunate to leave with only a few broken bones. It wouldn't be strange if he ended up hospitalized for half a month. Boom! The next moment, as if a grenade had exploded, the sound of an explosion echoed throughout the area. Even those standing over a dozen meters away felt the intense impact. Almost everyone present shut their eyes subconsciously. After all, they could easily imagine the outcome that awaited those struck by a Henglian Grandmaster. If a Henglian Grandmaster managed to land a square blow, they could kill a bull with one hit. Even a neutralizing Grandmaster would end up with broken bones if they got struck by a Henglian Grandmaster. Meanwhile, the sound of an impact meant that Yi Kuei's punch landed on Xiaofan. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. However, when everyone opened their eyes again, they were dumbfounded. How is this possible? At this time, not only was Xiaofan completely intact, but he had actually caught Yi Kuei's iron fist with just one hand. Yi Kuei himself was surprised by this situation. He never thought that his punch would meet with such a result. You've made your move. Holding on to Yi Kuei's fist, Xiaofan looked at the middle-aged man and asked calmly, "Is it my turn now?" Chapter 2843, Shocking the upper zone. Xiaofang's words seemed to stimulate Yi Kuei, the latter's face immediately turning ashen. Yi Kuei was indeed surprised that Xiaofan had blocked his punch, but that was merely because he had not expected that Xiaofan would actually be a neutralizing Grandmaster. Moreover, although his previous punch seemed fierce and domineering, he had actually used only about half of his strength. After all, he would be in big trouble if he created too much of a scene. At that time, even Lu Tiandi wouldn't be able to protect him. However, Yi Kuei never thought that Xiaofan would take advantage of this fact and turn him into a laughingstock in the eyes of the crowd. He was a dignified Henglian Grandmaster. Even the owners of international corporations would have to be polite to him and treat him as a VIP when meeting him. As for neutralizing Grandmasters, they could only cower in fear in front of him. He had never once suffered such humiliation before. "You bastard!" Yi Kuei took a step forward and punched with his other hand. Half-step collapsing punch. This time, Yi Kuei did not hold back at all. The only thing on his mind was to make Xiaofan regret his words. Xiaofan responded to this second attack in a similar manner, extending his other hand to catch the punch. He didn't seem to have noticed that Yi Kuei's present punch was different from the one before. Upon seeing this, Yi Kuei sneered. A punch carrying 50% of his strength indeed wouldn't pose a threat to a neutralizing Grandmaster. A neutralizing Grandmaster could easily block the attack by relying on technique. However, it was a different story for a punch carrying his full strength. A neutralizing grandmaster who tried blocking such an attack would definitely end up with broken bones. Yet, Xiaofan was ignorantly trying to receive his punch using the exact same method. Boom! A loud explosion rang out as Yi Kuei's fist collided with Xiaofan's palm. The shockwave generated by the impact this time was much stronger than before. Nevertheless, Yi Kuei was still dumbfounded as he looked at Xiaofan. This was because the result of his second punch was exactly the same as his first. Xiaofan had still caught his fist without fail. Did I subconsciously hold back in fear of getting into trouble? Inevitably, such a thought occurred to Yi Kuei. After all, this was the only reasonable explanation he could think of for this situation. Otherwise, how could a neutralizing grandmaster possibly receive his full-powered punch? However, Xiaofan did not give Yi Kuei any time to react at all. Immediately, he pushed Yi Kuei's hands aside and executed a palm strike on the latter's chest. The palm strike was so fast that the attack had already connected with Yi Kuei's chest before he realized what was going on. However, even after noticing the attack, Yi Kuei paid no attention to it at all. As a Henglian grandmaster, he had long since developed an instinctual defensive mechanism. Whenever his body received an attack, his muscles would tighten, giving them a toughness resembling steel and neutralizing the attack's impact. If neutralizing grandmasters were proud of their techniques, then Henglian grandmasters were proud of their physical body's toughness. In simpler terms, a Henglian grandmaster was someone trained to take hits and dish out devastating blows. Even if a Henglian grandmaster managed to land only 1 out of 100 attacks on a neutralizing grandmaster, this one attack would end the fight instantly. Boom! Yi Kuei stood steadily even after receiving Xiaofan's palm strike. He also looked at Xiaofan in silent contempt. Nobody present found it surprising that Xiaofan's attack had no effect on Yi Kuei either. This was because Henglian grandmasters were precisely this powerful. They were truly monsters in human skin, and trying to harm these monsters with the hands and feet of ordinary humans was an utter joke. This was also why the various major corporations in the upper zone would desperately try to recruit or befriend Henglian grandmasters. Kid, I admit that you're strong. However, you can't hurt me. Patting his clothes, Yi Kuei said disdainfully, on the other hand, how long do you think your stamina can hold out against my attacks? A neutralizing grandmaster's ability to exert complete control over their physical body was indeed extraordinary. However, when it came to stamina, a neutralizing grandmaster was far from comparable to a Henglian grandmaster. A Henglian grandmaster could fight 3 days and 3 nights without rest. In contrast, a neutralizing grandmaster would be fortunate to last even half a day. Hence, neutralizing grandmasters would frequently curse Henglian grandmasters as merely a bunch of simple-minded brutes with well-developed bodies. Spectating from the sidelines, Muxin grew worried when she saw this situation. She never thought that Lu Tiandi would have a Henglian grandmaster as his bodyguard. The Boulder Corporation had to pay a great price just to get a Henglian grandmaster to become one of its elders. Moreover, apart from the Boulder Corporation's master, everyone else in the corporation treated this Henglian grandmaster with awe and respect. Yet, Lu Tiandi actually had such a powerful expert working as his henchman. It was ineffective. Xiaofan also couldn't help looking at Yi Kuei in surprise. Ever since his concentration had reached the Tier 4 peak standard, his control over his body in the real world had improved by a significant margin. After factoring in his improved physical fitness, he now even dared to apply some of the techniques he used in God's domain in the world. This was also why Xiaofan had provoked Yi Kuei. He was very curious to find out where his current limits lay. When Xiaofan was catching Yi Kuei's second punch, he hadn't just caught the attack with an open palm. Instead, he had executed 3 rapid palm strikes against Yi Kuei's fist. In other words, he had used the 3 extreme slashes technique, a simplified version of Miracle Dragon's 6 extreme slashes. As Xiaofan had executed his 3 palm strikes against Yi Kuei's fist almost in the same instant, it was practically impossible for the human body to tell that it wasn't just 1 but 3 separate attacks. Thus, Xiaofan had succeeded in blocking Yi Kuei's full-powered punch. Otherwise, even if his physical fitness had improved a lot after he began living in the upper zone, he would still have to avoid Yi Kuei's full-powered attack. Meanwhile, the offensive palm strike Xiaofan executed against Yi Kuei was currently his strongest attack. For extreme slashes. From an outsider's perspective, Xiaofang's attack would look like an ordinary palm strike. In reality, his attack consisted of 4 palm strikes executed in rapid succession on the same location. This attack placed a heavy burden on his mental strength, and he couldn't use it a second time even if he wanted to. Looking at Xiaofang's surprised expression, Kuei smiled. "Kid. Now it's my turn to." Just when Yi Kuei thought to attack again, his body suddenly stiffened, and he collapsed to the ground willy-nilly. His breathing became stifled, and he had difficulty even speaking. In fact, even his vision started to blur. These abrupt changes discombobulated Yi Kuei. He couldn't understand what was happening at all. "You. What the hell did you do to me?" Struggling to lift his head, Yi Kuei gaped at Xiaofan in confusion. He simply couldn't wrap his mind around how Xiaofan had managed to injure him so severely with just a palm strike. Now, he found even standing up from the ground difficult. The spectators were likewise surprised when they saw Yi Kuei collapse to the ground. He defeated a Henglian Grandmaster in 1 strike? Who is this guy? At this time, the onlookers eyed Xiaofan as if he were a monster. They even began wondering whether the scene before them was staged. After all, who could possibly believe that a Henglian Grandmaster would fall from just 1 palm strike? "I think I know who he is." Some time ago, 2 people managed to pass Yuantian City's mental path together. One of these people was even someone the Boulder Corporation brought in using its reserve slots. According to the rumors, that person was Zero Wings Guild leader, Black Flame. Although this guy looks different from God's Domain's Black Flame, they should be the same person. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, what? He's the guy responsible for dragging down the Starline Corporation's Lu Xinglua? Among the crowd, some people who kept tabs on Yuantian City's upper zone recognized Xiaofan. For a time, the street bubbled with commotion. Nobody had thought that Black Flame, the mythical sword emperor of God's domain, would actually appear in their upper zone. Moreover, the man had even defeated a Henglian Grandmaster with a single palm strike. His strength was simply terrifying. "So, he is the Black Flame Big Sis told me about?" Ji Luorong gaped in shock as she looked at Xiaofan. After all, Black Flame was currently rumored to be the strongest person in God's domain right now. He was an existence even the 5 great super guilds had to tiptoe around.